to remove executive session minutes for tonight.
Okay.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the committee? No? Okay, we do have a remote committee member, so we will do a roll call vote. Sean?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Gloria?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
Okay. Consent agenda approved. Thanks. And now we are on to our public comment. So if folks in the room or folks on Zoom have comments on Zoom, raise your hand and we'll get to you and bring you in. And if you're in the room, come to the microphone, state your name and your address. We usually have a sign-in sheet. We have a scrap paper we can put for a sign-in sheet. Thank you. Write your name and your address just so we can get that properly recorded in the minutes in case we miss it on the video. And we ask, as we usually do, limit your comments to 2 minutes so that anyone who, or everyone who wants to speak gets a chance. I think we've learned that 2 minutes is about one side of a single space, one side of a sheet of paper. I said the other day, I'm like, if you have 2 single space sides, you're probably not going to get the 2 minutes. But do your best. Thanks.
Sorry, I'm so nervous. I don't think I can feel my legs.
Oh, do not be nervous.
Hi, my name's Michelle De Oliveira. My address is 16 Prospect Street, Pepperell, Mass. Good evening, school committee and fellow colleagues. My name is Michelle De Oliveira, and I'm a teaching assistant at the Reader Miller School. I've been in Westford School District for 5, going on 6 years. I work in the developmental classroom with some of the most complex students in the district. I am here speaking today on behalf of the teaching assistants of Westford. Along beside me are my husband and daughter, Eridilson and Lydia. They are here to support me and TAs to receive a living wage. My husband and I struggle daily due to the salary I make. I pay for our health insurance through the district with very little extra after insurance is taken out. This leaves my check with an embarrassing amount of $535 every 2 weeks. I think everyone in this room can agree that no one can support themselves or a family on this income. My husband works 65 to 70 hours a week so we can have the necessities of life. My daughter and I miss him very much because he is never home and he is missing out on many family events and memories. My daughter asks me on a daily basis, why does Papai work so much? I never see him. I thought maybe the school committee could help me answer this question. It breaks my heart to tell her that I can't help our family the way I want to, especially considering I work full-time and I hold an important position of helping people. My fellow TAs and I work so hard each and every day. We love our jobs and our students. This is why we've been fighting so hard to be compensated properly for our position we hold. We deserve more money, and the bottom line is the schools absolutely need us. Teaching assistants and their families are suffering because of what we make. I am asking the school committee today to be on our side, support us, and make a difference. You have the opportunity to be the heroes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Chiapetta. I am a TA in the Reach Room at Miller. I've been with Westford since 2014. No paper today, I'm just going to speak from the heart. We are here today, yes, because we're fighting for a living wage, but way beyond that. All of those people in this room, we're here because we care. We care about the students. We have, ask any one of them, I'm willing to bet, any one of them has been up at night and thought, oh, this is a great idea, this can help my student, and would text that teacher and they would have a conversation about it. We don't just go to work and we leave it. We take these kids and these issues that they have, and we're constantly thinking about how we can better help them. Just in my own experience, I had a child years ago with CVI. I took a class on my own. I wasn't instructed to do it. I wasn't told to do it. I paid for it myself because I wanted to be able to help this child in the best way I possibly could. And then I was able to then take that and modify the books we use and all of the things that we use for this child. When I went into the autistic room, I started to read about books about autism because I wanted to know more and more and more. Because we want to help these children. During COVID, many people did way beyond than they were supposed to. I was making crafts at home and dropping them off to these students because I knew my parents were going out of their mind. And I was dropping them off and I was making videos telling them how to create these crafts so they could do it at home. My point is, these guys are here because they care, because they don't want to have to leave. They don't want it to have to be about money and have to leave. They want to stay with these children and they want to stay with this town that they absolutely love. So, as you all know, we've been negotiating. We're looking at about 0.5% of the entire school budget. I hope that's something we can come to a nice term with because 0.5% isn't all that much and there's a lot of caring in this room. Thank you.
Good evening, school committee members. My name is Mallory Brown, and I'm a parent of 2 children in the Westford public school system. I'm also fortunate enough to be a substitute teacher within the district. Today, I'm speaking in support of increasing Unit E teaching assistant salaries. As a mother of a neurotypical child, a child with a disability, and as a substitute teacher, I feel as though I have different perspectives allow me to understand the critical role that TAs play for children and staff within the schools. My oldest child is a neurotypical child in middle school. Although she has never required academic support, she's had a difficult time transitioning to kindergarten and was and still is an anxious child. During morning drop-offs, the kindergarten TAs would mentally prepare her for the day by helping her plan out her morning and review the classroom schedule. This continued through her early elementary school years, and my daughter never required a 504 or IEP for anxiety, but the teaching assistants took it upon themselves to support her emotionally. My youngest child is at the Miller School in the substantially separate classroom. He's on an IEP and requires one-to-one support throughout the day. My son is medically complex, non-mobile, and non-speaking. I feel very fortunate that he has a place within our hometown that he's able to attend school. He has an amazing teacher and an amazing support team. They're over there. There are 2 teaching assistants in my son's classroom. All of the teaching assistants know my child's needs like the back of their hand. They know how to read his nonverbal cues, they know when he isn't acting himself, and they know how and when to push him as a student. They know his likes and dislikes, they've learned about his medical needs, practice independent feeding skills, work on gross motor, fine motor, and communication skills. They even know his outside schedule better than I do. I know that if his teacher is absent, that my son has a familiar face and someone who will be there to support his needs. As a substitute, I've seen teaching assistants at work and how they go above and beyond their duties. They support the substitutes and they often take over the classroom duties if the teacher is out. They are also the biggest support when it comes to behaviors in the classroom and at recess. I've seen TAs take over for teachers when they have had leaves due to illnesses or trainings or meetings. I've seen TAs creating schedules for kids on their caseloads while supporting the classroom teachers and other students in the classroom, those of whom they are not even required to support, but do so because that's what they do. I've seen them take over for music, art, gym, and lunch, becoming substitutes themselves. I've seen them rush at the end of the day to their second job so that they are able to support themselves and their families. Many of the TAs that I have worked with have been in the district for many years. They are highly qualified and trained due to their years of service. Teaching assistants play such a vital role in our schools. If nothing is done about the low salaries, these wonderful teaching assistants are going to seek employment in other districts and other fields. Our teaching assistants deserve livable wages. Thank you.
I always think of you doing Ice Ice Baby and that. That's what goes through when I look at you, just so you know.
I'm sorry.
All right, so I'm going to sort of look at this and sort of look at you. My name is Jennifer Salvucci Bent. I am the parent of 2 children, Alexandra and Charlotte, known as Charlie Bent, in the Robinson School. If you don't know Charlie, go take a look over there. That's all I'm going to say. I've been like, my heart's beating, not because I'm nervous, but because I'm looking at these people, and I know, because Sue's here, and I think I've seen others of you and how much they do for my daughter, so that's where it's coming from. But I'm going to say first, I cannot impress upon you what a literal godsend all the teachers have been to my daughter, her confidence, and her overall independence. My daughter has had a one-to-one since beginning the preschool here in this building in Westford Public Schools. Without a trusted adult by her side, my daughter literally could not do many of the things required of her day. In other words, she would not be able to access the curriculum without them. My daughter sees her gen ed teacher, who we love, and her special ed teacher, who we also love. They're fantastic, but this isn't about them. It is about the one-to-one that works on every skill, academic and life, every single day for 6.5 hours straight. Like, that's so much to me, and I'm a teacher as well, so I also work with one-to-ones, not these wonderful people. I called my apartment complex today, and I said, what's a 1-bedroom renting for today? And she said $2,325. I said, well, the top tier at Westford Public Schools is $25,000 minus taxes. That is $1,666. That's if you don't take insurance, like Lydia's mother doesn't. What? That puts them at a deficit of over $600 with no other bills. None. What is she supposed to do with Lydia? She needs to go to camp. She needs to do things. Like, these people shouldn't have to suffer. Like, that's what we're doing. And you guys are the best. Like, this school system, we want to buy a house. That market's insane, obviously, so we're waiting. But we narrowed it down to Robinson and Chrysler Fully, which is like 2 houses at any given time. And we finally said, forget it, because we don't want to lose these people. These people have held my daughter's hand, have helped her transition. Sue and I were just talking about it, from a changing table to a wheelchair. That is a big deal. And she couldn't do it without them, because they're the ones that do it. Like, I can't impress upon you how much this means to me. I want to stay in this school district. I love it. You guys have been phenomenal. Carrie, I've talked to you before about other things. I know how hard you all worked during COVID. I remember listening to those meetings. But now, years later, when some of these people have stayed through COVID and stayed through everything, like, we need to now do something for them. Like, I don't know why this is an issue. I don't know why we're fighting since November. November! It is June. These people need a living wage to stay, or my daughter is going to suffer. Her son is going to suffer. Everybody's going to suffer. We're going to lose amazing people. Please, I am begging you, do not let it happen. Please. And I will finalize it with, I wrote, how can they live? But I think I got that across. I think it's $5 a gallon now to fill up our tanks. If you don't live anywhere near Westford, that's a problem. I go to Cambridge, it's $80 every 3.5, 4 days right now for me. They can't afford it. They can't afford any other bills. We've established that. That is not okay. It is not okay for these people. They are the life of those schools. The teachers, again, fabulous. The special education people, fabulous. I talked to Courtney. She does an amazing job. All of you do. But I don't think the schools would, I know they wouldn't be what they were without the people behind me and every other one that's in your school system. Please, I beg of you, we need to do better, and we got to do it quick, because they can't leave. We can't afford it, and our kids deserve them, and they deserve the living wage. It's just the bottom line. So please, thank you.
Any others for public comment?
I'm Jose Aleman, 23 Robbins Road, Air, Massachusetts. I am a high school teacher. I teach world languages, Spanish at WA for 5 years. And I'm here, although I am not at Unit E, because I consider them, all of them, my team. And I think they are our home team. And I think anybody who has that label of school something in their names is part of the team. Whether it is the cafeteria, the school cafeteria worker, or the maintenance, the school maintenance, or the volleyball, the Westford volleyball team is part of the local team, is part of our WPS team. And when I see you and see your faces, and I've been, congratulations for for taking this lead. I see that you are part of a team. We are a team. We are a team as long as we carry the same voice, as long as we chant the same song. And the one we are chanting and we want your support is we have earned it, we deserve it, and we need it. We need a living wage for the Unit E assistant teachers. And please, be on our team. We are the team. And the decision is not yours. Fine. What I am asking is simple. Bring that message, bring that call, bring these arguments and these voices to the next level. By so doing, you have done your part. And we are a team. If we are not a team, fractions will occur, morale will decrease. We don't want that. We are champions. We are a nice working team. Let's keep it that way. Please bring this plea to the next level. Let's bring a living wage to our Unit E assistant teachers. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Well, thank you for those who did make comment tonight. Thanks for coming out tonight. We do hear you, we see you, and we appreciate all of your voices. Thank you. Let me check online real quick, too. Nope, nobody else online. We are moving on to informational updates. We'll start with the superintendent update. Yeah, sorry, and as always, you're welcome to stay, you don't have to stay, we understand. We'll give you a second to leave if you need to. And we'll go.
So the first update, I had told people that on at this meeting, I would give people a updated recommendation as to the mask recommendation that we had made a little while before the last meeting. In looking at the numbers, the numbers they've gone down a little bit. They were very high in May by comparison. I mean, we do know that a number of different events took place. I feel like we've been pointing people to that information so that people can make decisions based on the numbers that we're posting. I will say that I saw on my own and I heard from people that the recommendation didn't necessarily change a lot of behaviors. I think people are aware of their circumstances and scenarios, and so I just encourage people to continue to be paying attention and look as we go through the next couple of weeks. But as the initial recommendation was just that, a recommendation, I don't necessarily see a change in that. The CDC hasn't changed Middlesex County's rating, so I would just say that people just should continue to look at the information and make decisions based on what they think is best for their family. DESE did tell us that they are not going to continue the testing program in the fall. They were going to stop it in April. They've continued it through the rest of the school year, but they're not going to be funding it in the fall. So they're encouraging districts to look at that, to make information, to make informed
Sorry.
decisions based on that. The commissioner mentioned that, if there was an uptick in cases in the fall, that we might want to have PPE and tests on hand if we needed them. We do have some. We'll look at that. I don't necessarily know if we're going to be going out and purchasing more than what we have, but we'll work with we'll work with the director of facilities and our local board of health as well through there. But that's just an interesting thing that they're not going to fund it.
Can I ask a question on that, Chris? If the school nurses still want to have the ability to test students in next fall in
Like
the
the
building,
the symptomatic
the
testing.
symptomatic testing, would we need to, still have that kind of?
We would need to be purchasing those tests.
Okay.
Yes. And they have been provided by the state right now.
Okay.
DESE is providing us information to communicate with their vendors.
Mm-hmm.
But the expectation is that the cost of that would then be coming to the local districts. So that's something that we'll be looking at. We have to. I don't know right now at this moment in time what our supplies look like if
Okay.
we were to project for that.
Okay.
So I'll talk
Look
with
into
the
it.
nurses to see if they feel like they have what they need for that,
Okay.
if that was the case.
And the only question that I would have is like, what would be the criteria for deciding like whether or not to proceed? Like what would be the threshold if you were thinking about having to invest into like tests or PPE or what have you? Like what's the line?
That's a good question. I don't know what that is yet.
And I'm sure that you were surprised by DESE's announcement, so I'm not asking
Yeah.
you that question right now.
Right.
Because it seems unexpected, but.
It really was, and were you part? It was a virtual meeting. I'm not sure. It was, well, the medical professionals think that there'll be a spike in the fall, but we're not going to support this endeavor anymore. So it was kind of left everybody going,
Oh, wow.
okay, thank you. So,
It would be interesting to see what our usage of the
Yeah.
symptomatic testing
Yeah,
has been.
actually, that makes sense.
Project out.
yeah,
Maybe it's an ARPA request or something.
yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good thinking.
So that was one piece, sorry. Then I wanted to let everybody know that this week, I didn't send out my update on June 1st because I wanted to wait until I got through the nerves of graduation. And so I'm going to send it out this week. And in that, I'm going to include information as to how there'll be a survey link as to how, if people want to be considered. Remember I talked about putting together an advisory group for the strategic district improvement plan. So I'm going to put together a survey where people can identify if they're parts of specific groups, but I want to send it out to everybody so that if there are people who are not associated with a specific group, whether it's an SAC, whether it's a PTO, but would like to participate, that they could be considered. I am going to limit the number of people that are participating, so I'll just look to see what kind of interest there is and then try to pull together that group for early summer. I don't know if the meeting would take place before the end of June. We'll see. But that'll be coming out this week. And then the last thing I was going to mention, probably some of you would mention as well too, is just reminding everybody that annual town meeting is Saturday, 9 o'clock at Westford Academy, as long as the weather's great.
Have you looked at a forecast?
I have not.
haven't either.
I think
Just-
it's good so far.
Interesting to note that.
Looks good?
We're good?
The rain date is Sunday, but also the continuance is Sunday. 'Cause
Okay.
when we used to meet indoors, it would
Ah.
go to Monday night.
Yep.
But with outdoors.
Ooh,
Sunday morning, or is
Yeah.
it is Sunday morning, okay.
we're looking at 40% chance of rain right now.
And I'll make a
It's gonna be sunny. I'm gonna get a sunburn. I'm bringing the sunscreen. I know what's gonna happen.
I'm gonna make a plug for the breakfast and food truck, the
Yes.
breakfast and lunch food truck.
Breakfast truck.
And the family-friendly seating area in the back behind the seats, where you can spread out, picnic blanket, distract the kids and still take part and vote.
Clickers, hopefully.
Yep, Article 1 is for electronic vote tabulators to hopefully cut some time from standing counting. And that's what I can think of. 9 a.m. See you
Good.
there.
I did also want to congratulate Principal Antonelli on an excellent ceremony Friday night.
Very much.
I thought
Father's
it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, just a question or a comment on the superintendents. So, Chris, you referenced the test and stay, and then we discussed it a little bit, and then I think Valerie threw out, like, well, maybe we can think about, like, ARPA funds or something like that. So that would strike me that, they'd be distributing ARPA funds sometime this summer. So if we're going to be looking at something like that, is there any way that your office can look into what something like providing a test program at school, if we're fronting the cost, what that would cost the district? So
I
we
think-
can make a decision as to whether or not we should suggest to the select board that, hey,
Right.
this is something that we need additional funding for.
Well, what we can do is we can certainly look to see what supplies we still have on hand.
Okay.
right, And get a sense as to, and it's the symptomatic testing.
Right.
Specifically, to get a sense as to the usage of it before we close for the summer, so we can get that information, collaborate with the nurses to see what they have available, and then from there, determine, okay, well, what do we think we might need for the fall?
Okay, so you think that we could do that before July?
Well, we need to do it before the school year ends.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't want to ask the nurses to have to look at that over the summer. They
Good.
they
Yeah.
deserve a long break.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
And for ARPA timing, the town is expecting that second chunk of one-time use funds, around 3 million in late, I think, August or so. So I
Is
think
it?
we have
Okay.
time,
Oh, we do, okay.
because that second chunk of money will go through the same process,
Yeah.
I would imagine. I don't want to speak for the select board.
Finance Subcommittee meets tomorrow. I don't imagine we will necessarily have all the data that we just talked about, but we can talk about it a little bit
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Yep.
true.
Question? Anything else for the superintendent before we go on to school committee updates?
Were you going to make a personnel update?
We're going to do that during the personnel update
Okay,
section,
okay,
yeah.
Great. Jumping the
Okay,
gun, as
thank you.
usual.
School committee updates.
Well, I'll use that segue to mention that the finance subcommittee is meeting tomorrow.
I heard that.
And most of the agenda is actually the fabulous Pat Leinhardt presenting the subgroup with the FY22 kind of like analysis and projecting out to the end of the year. So we can talk about what kind of deposit to make into the Special Education Reserve Fund before that information will come to this full group on the 13th. So it's kind of like a preview to help flush out any questions and what kind of information we want to see.
And I would remind us that we unusually have another meeting in a week. That should be our final meeting until sort of the summer break. Just the agenda has not been posted, but you can tentatively expect things like Q4 financial updates, second readings of policies, summer warrant approval process, among other, subcommittee assignments. Yeah, we don't even have people's interests on that yet.
No.
This could be this might get pushed. We'll see how we do. Start sending me the subcommittees you're interested with. I'll send a follow-up email so we have that on top of our mind. School committee officer elections. So those are some of the things that you can look for next week. We are starting at 6:30 again. Yes, we'll be starting at 6:30 for an executive session, but the public session will start at 7 as usual. Something else I was gonna say. Nah, maybe that's it.
Just a reminder as well, I'll do seeing as Gloria is away. We currently have 3 policies up for public comment until the 9th of this week. So public hearing on budget, the procurement and student photographs. So last few days to make any comments on that. And I think policy, we're probably meeting Friday in advance of getting those ready for final vote next Monday. There we go.
Fantastic, thank you. Yep.
Can you speak to, I've heard from a couple parents about the class placement information being sort of pushed to August again. Like, I think pre-COVID it was sort of end of June, so then that move-up day is more impactful. They get to meet like their specific teacher and stuff. But it was communicated that it's pushed to August, and I know that was sort of COVID related, but I was just wondering if you had any insight into why that this year impacted.
I don't think it was pushed to August because of COVID.
I meant like last year it was, right?
Right, but I think that, I think that that was the more, as far as the release of the class placement for the elementary schools, there was a number of reasons why we had moved towards August for that purpose, based on, I mean, it was a whole bunch of different reasons that led to it. It was different because the 6 through 12 schools were trying to get the schedules out that weren't as specific about, you know, the homeroom information was different, but I don't remember why we had moved it to August.
Right, so there had been some shuffling that needed to occur, which caused issue with students and families having to reassign. Additionally, there are some teachers who are not necessarily hired by the end of the year, so with those things in place, they felt like they could obviously provide a much more concrete answer that won't fluctuate. So there were times where parents were working with students about teacher names and all of that, and then that ended up changing, which can be kind of traumatic for a child who had been prepping all summer.
So we think late summer would become the norm then?
That's what I thought it was becoming, yes. Yeah.
Anything else for school committee update? Okay. Thank you very much. And we're on to first order under business, which is Westford Academy mascot finalists.
Very excited.
Principal Jim Antonelli, thank you for coming out tonight.
You can go first.
Thank you for attending graduation and your support.
Pleasure.
And thank goodness the rain never came.
Right.
Oh my
Perfect.
gosh.
I feel like your briefcase has got one of those like the handcuffs, like the finalists are in the
Yes, the
briefcase.
security.
Seriously.
It's like the diamonds going
Price
to the
Waterhouse,
Oscars.
Price
Yeah.
Waterhouse
Yeah.
Cooper with the.
Dun, dun,
I
dun,
know.
dun.
He's got like a bodyguard.
Top secret.
So first of all, I want to thank the committee. We had a nice cross-section of students, parents. Our teacher rep here is Kyle Kusai, and community representation. We met twice to outline the process. We decided as a group that we would allow students in grades 6 through 11 to submit a graphic. So we utilized the middle school principals to send out information to grades 6 through 8. I sent it out through grades 9 through 11. And we actually have 2 finalists from the 6th grade in the 8 that I present to you tonight. We had really over 40 images that came in. And it was the work of the committee to review those based on some of the way they were designed and so forth. And I completely used the committee to vote on this. I recused myself from any voting in the process. We did unanimously vote on the 8 that were brought forward. On the committee, we have a WA graduate who is a graphic designer. So after the first 2 meetings, when we whittled it down and had the students, the April 1st was the first date when we had the submissions come in. We whittled it down to 8, and then Kyle actually stayed one night, and we scheduled the graphic designer to spend 10 minutes. Nick Stanglewitz is his name. He's a graduate of 2016. So Nick took his expertise and met with each individual student and just shared some thoughts, colors and, maybe some lines and how this is going to transfer from the image to clothing, right? So we also had another person on board, Amy Sherman, who is very technically savvy with this, product development and so forth. So it was great. A lot of people weighed in, and we're hoping that I can show these to you tonight as a sneak preview, and then the process would be to put together a survey for grades 6 through 11 to vote, and we'll see if there's a front runner. If there's not a front runner this week, because I do want to have this done by the end of this week, we would then bring it forward. Perhaps we have 2 that are very close, right? And we'll talk to the committee again, get their input before making that decision, and then we might have to bring it back to, maybe we have three finalists that are top scorers, right? So I think it's been a really open and honest process. I appreciate the committee's work. It's not an easy task, but we set up our terms and conditions, and we've stuck to those, and we've got 8 finalists. So I'm ready to share those with you if you'd like to see them, and I will kind of flip to you and then show to the audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So exciting.
Okay. So we have.
Able to actually see it on camera.
I'm hoping that. Well, do you think they will see it on camera?
Not super well, but
Okay. We have Audrey Ferguson, grade 6.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's, yeah.
She's in the 6th grade? Did you just say grade 6? I know. See? Everybody else is going to like,
Pretty
wow.
impressive.
Yeah.
Dad.
We have Haley Fawn, grade 9.
Oh.
I like that.
We have Julia Donesco,
Oh.
grade 11.
Yeah, that's cool.
that's interesting.
I love the different directions.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
there's more.
Yeah.
I couldn't picture the variety, and now
Yeah.
I am. I
Yeah.
didn't
I know.
imagine.
That's why
like,
I'm not good at this.
it's
This is
really
amazing.
And Deeksha McKenna, grade 6.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Very cool.
And Ella Peralt, grade 11.
Cool.
And Elizabeth Liu, grade 10.
Oh, with the crossing of the arms came back. Yes.
And we have Fiorella Rodriguez, grade 9.
Oh, cool.
Super
Champion style,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool. These are really extraordinary. It's really
And
amazing.
our last one is grade 11, Prajana Sajan.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's scary.
Really good elements.
Yeah.
It's all come
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And and some of them have the like WA red kind of thing. Yeah.
Yep. We did frame that, where it was maroon and gray are the colors, and if you wanted to add in white as a third color, but the students, I think, really stayed to the rules and regulations of how we set things up. So now it's my job to work with our IT department to figure out how best to set up a Google tracker, Google Sheet to have folks
So
vote,
they can
vote
see
on
the
this.
image and then vote on each one.
Yes, yes.
That's great. And I think it's fantastic that you were able to bring those, because you're right, the 8, you said 40?
Yeah, they were.
So that's tremendous in the first place. And the fact that the committee came down to these 8, I love the idea that they had a consulting opportunity
Right.
with someone who just gave them some suggestions. It's still their work. They still did it. They took it, came back, and then to give all 8 of them the credit, I think, is huge, because there will, depending on what the outcome is. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it was really just suggestions from Nick. Nick,
Yeah.
there was a certain line that he said maybe you want to consider, and then it was up to the student, because now it's up to the student body to take the vote on that.
Those are
But-
all very clear from a distance. Like, we can really see
Right.
everything, which is good.
Well, actually, that's one of the questions that I had, Jim. Has anyone looked at this as to, like, all of these are good to be resized and would present well as smaller and would present well larger, right?
There may have to be some final fine tuning, which
Okay.
Nick said he would work with the winner of the actual contest, Sean. So it may just be that, a little bit of tweaking. And then there are certain colors, like maroon's a certain number that you have to stick to, right? We stick to a certain number at WA. Jeff's done a tremendous job, Bunyan, in creating a brand for us, that WA block lettering. So we talked about that. So he's been really consistent. You can really see the WA that we have here. That's our WA, and then we have a couple different renditions of students want to have it written out Westford Academy or Ghosts, a couple different ways. And then from here, what we need to do, once this is voted on, is really get it out to the people who produce these products, so that we're consistent. I was driving around town. I know the Ghost is still out there, so seeing some of the graduation signs, a lot of them was changed to the cap, you know, which was great, but I did see a few stragglers out there. That's going to take a little bit of time. As we were looking at the graduation seats the other night, the back of the graduation seats have gray ghosts, but they can come off, and we can have those formatted with some covering, you know. So we should be able to make some of those changes along the way. The ghost in the main gym has been painted over and already has a banner over it. And I've collected pictures of all these. So everything that's been on the wall is going into the Westford Academy Trust Fireproof Trustee Safe and the history of how this has happened. So there won't be, hopefully, any questions when we move forward.
That's great.
I'm open to any questions that you might have or any advice. I mean, this is a first time through, so trying to be as open, honest, and transparent as possible.
Can I ask a question as like a new person? So, are you laughing at me already?
A new person.
In terms of the folks who are on this committee, is there someone who's looking at this through a DEI lens, like when you guys are talking about this?
We have definitely, absolutely had discussions about some terms were used, like menacing along the way, and just how people felt. Dr. Shannon talked to us about Mingo about how she felt when she drove around Marisol in the town and said that image does not make me feel welcome. So we definitely had those discussions, and Michelle gave me a lot of insight a year ago when we were talking about this process with another group before we brought it forward to this committee to actually take a look at what these images might look like moving forward. Trying to be as sensitive as possible so that we're not upsetting people within our community.
Could I ask, actually, has Dr. Michelle actually seen the 8 kind of finalists?
Not yet, no.
Because and I don't take away from any of the creativity or the artistic talent, but 1 or 2 I kind of felt still showed maybe elements of, I think, what was that initial discussion in what was the issue with the original logo, and so I'm just kind of curious as to maybe having a bit more in-depth conversation on some of the elements. I think just 1 or 2 there kind of, I know there was kind of the shaded face, or and maybe some of them kind of more having a peaked top, and so again, I just to make sure, like, we have an amazing opportunity to really get this right, and I would hate for us to miss the mark on it.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
just my input.
We have a
Jim.
great relationship. I'm more than
Yeah.
happy to have a conversation with her, and
Yeah.
because something could be tweaked at this point too.
Exactly,
You know,
exactly.
That's not a problem. I'll reach out to her tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Good, it's such good advice.
And Jim, the goal's to roll this out for the fall, is that?
I would love to, because there are a lot of organizations in the community that would like to start thinking about how to put this on the clothing and for their own businesses. And I know our students will be anxious to also, the fall comes quick, and they'll be they're always looking for a different garb to wear post-season. So I would really like to have this done prior to the end of the school year, so that I can work with some of the vendors over the summer and then have an unveiling, really, as the students come back in the fall. We want to celebrate the new mascot for WA. That's the master plan.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for the time that you're taking with this process.
You're very welcome. Very welcome.
It's a good thing you're having a vote, because I wouldn't want to have to decide and pick among those.
I'm
It would be
touching
really,
it.
it'd be really hard.
No, we'll leave this up. I mean, the students are the ones that are most impacted by this, so.
And also, how impressive is that the amount of middle school students that were,
I know.
it's I mean, that, and it's right, outside of the mascot discussion, the fact that so many of our younger students were able to contribute to that, it's really cool.
Yeah. And do a really good job.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really creative on how they present it, so.
And they're
And listen to the
sixth graders.
feedback. I mean, students come in at 6th grade and meeting with a graphic designer and,
Right.
Yeah.
and making
Wow.
tweaks to things.
Sounds
I mean,
cool.
that shows a lot,
Really
so.
impressive.
Yeah.
And really, it was really grades 9 through 11 that contributed to this, so.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Jealous.
Well, thank you. We look forward to hearing the final results.
All right, I will share.
Appreciate getting the sneak preview.
You're very welcome.
Thank
All right.
I'm gonna go watch the video later and replay and pause and look at them again, because they went by so fast. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Next up is our Cpac survey results, which we're very much looking forward to. Oh, I said I would do that. Okay, let's do this. That way you can have control. Yeah, but then I
Do you
I
want
was
a printout,
looking.
Eileen? I have my printout.
No, I got it. It is. It's 367,902. Everybody at home's gonna make a
Okay, I have to round to the left, but I've seen this.
Yeah, oops, I already screwed it up though. How do I do full screen? Okay. Let me share this before we get started so folks at home can see the slides as well, and folks in here, actually.
This will be interesting because.
Okay.
Oh, good. Cool.
Well, thank you, all three of you, for coming. We have been looking forward to this. We really appreciate the time and the effort to compile the survey results and bring it to us tonight.
Thanks.
And they're gesturing towards you, Eileen. For the,
Yeah,
for the
I
credit.
guess so. So, hi, I'm Eileen Tatro. My pronouns are she, they. And I am a former chair of the Cpac, for the Westford Cpac, Special Education Parent Advisory Council. I'm here with Melissa Mackey, who is the current chair, and Jill Atkins, who is the current co-chair. We last year created our first annual survey of students with special needs. Actually, it should be of families of students with special needs. And you know, we decided to do a second annual survey to make it truly annual. And so we wanted to come and share our findings this year. We shared a little bit in the fall from the previous year. Let's see. Oh, look, it worked. Okay. All right. So the purpose this year, as I said, was to continue the annual survey of the Cpac families and other Westford families of students with special needs so that we could understand both the successes and the challenges within our district special education program, and also actually within the Cpac as well. We jointly conducted the survey and shared the findings with the Office of Pupil Services with Courtney Moran to allow for self-reflection on current practices, offer guidance for improvements, which you'll hear some here, and also to plan for future meaningful Cpac activities. All right, so this survey was conducted February 25th through March 22nd. We gave it about a good month via Google Forms. We shared it with families via the Cpac email mailing list. We have a MailChimp, also the Facebook page, and school and district newsletters that went out to, I think, just about everybody. And we received this year 47 responses, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Families were actually asked to submit one survey per student with special needs in their home. So there are some single families who may have submitted multiple surveys. And I compiled and analyzed the results because I like pivot tables. All right, so let's get into the demographics a little bit. All right, so the survey response, you know, I said I'd address this. The survey response was actually down by 49% from our first year. So possible reasons for the decline. I think a really big one is that the first year, parents were more invested in providing feedback in that hybrid remote schooling year that we had. It was very challenging. There were parts of the survey that were definitely focused on that year. And I actually think that was one of the biggest, if not the biggest factor, without going out and saying, why didn't you fill in the survey? Which is kind of counterproductive. I don't think we promoted it as frequently as we did the prior year, which may or may not have had an impact on it. And also, we did conduct the survey later. The first survey was conducted in December of 2020. This one moved to February, March 2022. It's really hard to say, like, did not doing it in December have an impact? I don't know. I still think number one is the big one. And I think that what we've seen in responses may be a little bit more typical. But maybe next year you'll find out. Okay, so grade levels and programs of the respondents. So we did change a little bit just so that everybody knows. The first year we did a 6 through 12 for grades. This year we broke it down to 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. So there's a little bit of funkiness going on in there.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right. That's why you'll see there's a little bit going on, and there's a link to the report in this that talks a little bit more about that. That biggest chunk is really in the 3 through 5, right? The 34%. That whole 6 through 8, 9 through 12 does make up 45% of the respondents. This year we didn't get any adult education respondents. We do ask about that. And what we did find as well was that, the majority, more than three quarters had an IEP. Like 2% had both the IEP and the 504, and this year we had 17% with the 504. 504 tends to be a little bit more medical focused than the IEP is, and sometimes the two go together, right? And we did actually have a couple respondents who said either. Also, 81% are Westford Public School students, 13% were out of district. And that is out of district by placement by the district. 2% homeschooled and 4% attend a charter. Okay, and that actually plays in with a set of questions that I'll ask, because there's a set that Courtney specifically asked us to focus on the Westford Public Schools families. Okay. All right. So, and this is that section. So school communication and support. Obviously, Courtney doesn't have a lot of, she can provide some feedback to some of the out-of-district schools, but there's not a lot of influence there. And so that's why this is really kind of focused on those, Westford Public Schools families. This is kind of a little bit of an eye chart, but the point here is that the majority of families are continuing to find that, and they said this in the first year, that school-home communication needs improvement. It got worse this year, especially for pre-K to 5th grade families. Now, I will add to that saying that when you're dealing with an almost 50% decline in families, you're dealing with a very self-selected group. And so you can often find in surveys people who are very yay, I'm really excited about things, or families that are just really want to have something that they need to say. And so it's hard to say, but this is definitely something that is worth keeping an eye on. It's definitely a concern to say, that communication, it's not strong, and that is very clear.
And mostly in the younger grades, right?
Yes, it's mostly in the younger grades where the families really do, need it. But the cool thing is, and this is mostly in the, not mostly in the younger grades, but a big thing is that 92% of families know who their child's student support leader is, and we saw a huge bump in that K through 5 level, and I think this has everything to do with the student support leader and assistant principal roles being combined. Because if you know the assistant principal name, and you usually know the assistant principal's name, then at that grade level, you know your student support leader's name. They're in the building with the kids, and there's far more interaction with them. So I know this was something that several people, myself included, were very worried about. But it looks like there may be some benefits to it, at least in getting that name recognition out there. Okay. Families are continue to be comfortable voicing concerns to teachers and school staff, right? Whenever you see my slides, by the way, if it's red, yellow, those are our warning zones, If it goes far enough that there's 5 pieces, blues are in the middle, and the green is, go. So, so that's good stuff. So again, very comfortable voicing concerns. This is very similar to how we've seen it in the past.
Can I ask a question about the phrasing of that question?
Yep.
So in my program, in my day job, we collect a lot of data. And so sometimes we look at the phrasing of the question. And so when I was reading this question, I thought there was a couple of different ways that you could think about this question, which is, what is your comfort level? So that's, I think, different than did you voice your concerns and how were they received? It's sort of like how comfortable are you, you know, sharing your concerns? And so I think, I just think that there's a few different ways that question could be asked.
Thank you.
I hope that, I don't know.
No, that's fair comment, right? This is, you know, volunteer stuff. So, so families are also saying that they're continuing to find requesting additional support and advocating for their child uncomfortable. So, you know, what you said, Mari, is totally like on point. At the same time, there does seem to be some ability to know what they think comfortable and uncomfortable is. So I think there's a little bit of validation in there. Maybe it's not perfect, right? But it's we're definitely seeing that there is discomfort. We saw it last year. I don't do like the whole like how different, because it wasn't you know, significantly different. It was about the same. Right. So it's just that comfort level, asking anyone for additional support and advocating for it. Just the you know, parents find it challenging. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Yes, Valerie.
Thank you. For my lack of experience, can you talk about the difference between that? So with the first step would be requesting it, and then is when you say advocating, is that like the next step, like to push for something?
Yeah,
Is that how to
yeah,
think about
it's
that?
really
Okay.
that kind of, you know, that request going forwards, you know, asking about it, and then really kind of stepping forth and advocating and really kind of.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand. Thank you.
Good question, thank you. All right. Let's go with that next slide. All right, so this is a new question this year. So that blue sheet, that's actually my blue sheet, because it just came, like the day after I presented to the Cpac, it showed up, because people were like, what are you talking about? There is on there a link to a post-IEP meeting survey. This blue sheet goes out with everybody's IEPs, okay? It is a very I'm going to say right now, I'm prejudicing this whole thing. It's a very boilerplate sheet. If you've seen it like 7-8 years in a row, like some of us have, you're probably like, yeah, okay, whatever, and you just kind of throw it to the side, right? There is a link right above Courtney's signature to a survey, right there. So I put on it because I was like, I don't think people know about this, Courtney. And she was like, yeah, they do. No, she's heard this from me. No, so, I mean, what we're really finding out is families really didn't know about it, right? Yeah. That IEP response that, you know, they may or may not use if they do know about it. They still didn't know that, hey, there's this Google form that you can go fill out. It's like a couple of questions. I can't even remember. It took me like a couple minutes. It's not a big deal. So just kind of wanted to share that. And so I actually have a recommendation here, which is rethinking the feedback process. There's a couple pieces to this. One is, and I told her this last year, put a QR code on the blue sheet. That QR code, if you scanned it right now, it actually goes to the survey. Put it on the blue sheet that leads to the form that provides both a visual indicator that, hey, there's an action item here, right? You see those all the time and you're like, I can do something with my phone. It's also an easy way to a form, right? I don't have to go type in a bit.ly or whatever that link was. The other is to have a student support liaison follow up via email with all of the families and include the link in the email. Again, it can be boilerplate, but if it's right there in front of you, you might be more likely to click it. So just kind of some thoughts, some feedback there, and this was shared with Courtney. Okay, a couple additional recommendations that came out of this, and some of this will also go back to some of the things that you'll see in the Cpac comments as well. One is to hold one or more open, moderated forums with families of students with special needs. Inviting families to openly speak about concerns and issues they're facing. It would be great at the individual school level, right? I think it gets, when you're dealing with like Cpac level, size or a big forum, it gets intimidating because there's so many people there. Also, having an outside third-party moderator really, I think, could help ensure a fair and balanced discussion. I'm not talking about spending big bucks here. It just, somebody who's not Courtney isn't, say one of you guys, Dr. Chu, whoever, not, somebody who's not directly related to this and an everyday, somebody who's always there. Also, provide a grievance process for families who feel they're being retaliated against for speaking out. So it's not brought up in here. There is a comments section that has been scrubbed so that identifying information has hopefully been removed that is in the report itself. And one of the concerns that came out was that there are families who are fearful of retaliation. And so I was thinking about the bullying process or the civil rights process that was put up this year, right? That thinking it would be really great if there was some sort of process run outside of that office where parents could say, I have a problem. And yes, there's going to be some stuff in there that doesn't pan out, but you know, those families who really are afraid, they really need that voice. Yes, Valerie.
Do you envision that being anonymous or like kind of a choice?
I think it can be a choice.
Like you contact me, you click here to be contacted or something like that?
I mean, yeah, it could be a and our survey even does like a fill in your email address if you want us to contact you or whatever. But it could definitely be that. The problem, and this is speaking from a different organization that I'm involved with grievances that are anonymous, is that it's really hard to follow up on that, right? If somebody comes in and says,
impossible.
Yeah, it's doable. It's really, really hard. And so you have to have the right people, like people who have been there.
But so you foresee that being something different than the Bureau of Special Education?
Yes.
Or the PRS process.
Right, which is
Bureau-
also already exists.
Yeah, so this is, I do, I mean, it may be a first step, or it may be, hey, you know, maybe it becomes information about having a grievance, you know, you do have a grievance, here are your options. But I know we did a BSEA, Bureau of Special Education presentation this year. It is a very daunting process, even having been through it, like having not been through the process, but I've seen the presentation, and they do a really good job explaining it and make it less daunting. It's still a very daunting process, right?
It's more of a formal process.
It's a very
whereas this
formal
is
process.
A bit more informal, maybe. By the
And
sounds
it
of
feels very legal, and so there may be another first step in there that is like not as intense for families.
Are folks in Cpac familiar? Has anyone done the PRS process, which is the problem resolution system through DESE, which is not a very legal process? It's like there's a form and then you submit it, and if you feel that the school district is not following through with the law, then they approach the, I guess, Dr. Chu,
Right.
and say like,
I can tell you that people do that because we know that.
We don't
Whether or
have
not
that data.
CPAC, whether that's something that CPAC talks about or
because it's less of a legal
Right.
process.
And that may be a really great presentation, like next year, Mari, to kind of reach out to DESE and ask them to do a PRS presentation, just like we had the BSEA presentation
Right.
this year. That's a great idea. Thank you both for bringing that up.
Sure.
Okay. All right, so that's the district. So CPAC support and interest. Okay, so we do kind of evaluate ourselves as well. It's important. This was a new question this year. It was asking, families how they felt about, kind of that 1 through 5 scale of, do you think the CPAC is useful? Do you think we're beneficial? And the answer was mainly, yeah, it was like 5 for, 5 and 4 are kind of the overwhelming majority. We do have some like low end 1s and 2s, people who weren't as happy with it. But you're always going to find that. Which is not discounting those families, and they usually did put something into the feedback that says this is why, which is good. Didn't share that out here, but it's, I understand it just happens to do with, the way that sometimes, when we have like the meetings with Courtney Moran, where maybe certain people didn't feel like they got to say as much as they wanted to, right? That sort of thing, because we only have an hour with her. So that sort of thing. Let's see. All right, so this is a very neat little thing, if I can make it work. There we go. All right. So one of the Cpac roles is to gain information from families and to share that back with Courtney Moran. Share that back with the district, really, but it usually Courtney's the first stop. And we asked about it because we've had a hard time getting feedback. And so the question became, what concerns, if any, do you have sharing your concerns with us? And what we were generally finding out was that, I think it's like a third of the families are kind of like, I didn't know you did that. A third of the families are like, I'm afraid to share that information. And a third are like, a good portion are like, I don't have a problem sharing that information. And they probably just don't have anything to come share concerns with. Still, the Cpac can do better in this role. So the recommendation here is to hold regularly scheduled family feedback sessions to gather information that is shared with the district. So the Cpac does have monthly meetings. About a quarter to half of those end up being actual meetings where they're business meetings where we discuss and make decisions, and about an hour of that becomes speaking about a topic. And then about half or so are presentations. And so this is something that could fit right in there. Maybe you do it quarterly, but just something where it could be more open, more like, hey, what's going on? As part of that, and it's not actually said on here, is that it would be really nice to have more than 12 people to show up that meeting. So, because that does become a concern, right? Is if you have the same people showing up to the same meetings, you're just going to hear the same concerns week in and week out, and there may be other things in there.
Did you notice a participation change at all when you needed to have remote meetings? Did that ever, because I feel like sometimes that has been beneficial, sometimes that has not been beneficial.
Hey, you were here for pre-COVID. Alicia was here pre-COVID, so I'm gonna. Did you notice a major participation change?
Let me put it this way. One night, Beth Tamel, Kathy Gilly Norton, and I all voted ourselves back on the board.
Yeah. So
I would say it's increased. Myself, I've been to Cpac meetings where there was only 2 people there. So I do think that the virtual option has definitely increased to a certain extent. Not as much as we would like to see.
It certainly seemed like there were people there that said, I wouldn't have been able to come if it was in person. And some of that was discomfort in in-person meetings in the pandemic, and some of it was the kids are running around in the background. We see a lot of that.
Right.
Well,
Right.
of course.
Yeah.
Is there any information seeking about and I'm sure you've done this, but I'm just going to ask because it's not in the presentation, about what times work best for folks, and and do folks need, we had a meeting last week about all the different languages that folks are now speaking in our district, and so is our materials translated for different folks that are moving to town? And
yep. There has not been, as we kind of, try to keep spinning up and getting better. And I will come into a part of that, which will be volunteering, because when you have the same people showing up at the same meetings,
yeah, you get burnout.
It falls on,
yeah.
The same people.
Yeah. A lot of it was, scheduling the meetings was, this is the only time the board could do it.
Yeah.
That it coordinated with the 3 of us.
Right.
Right.
And there was no other time that we could do it, so if nobody else is volunteering, then.
Yeah, no, and thank you for taking on that role and taking that leadership.
Yes. No, but it's definitely.
But it's a valid concern.
It is a valid concern. It's something that definitely came up from the Federation of Children with Special Needs this year. I will say that her name is Leslie. She's the representative really for the Cpacs from the Federation for Children with Special Needs, and she did challenge Cpacs to kind of have flexible timing. But I was like, I'm starting a new job, and we all have stuff going on, and it was just it became like only so many things you can do. So that was something that when I was chair, I just was like, I'm not even going to think about that right now. We're going to just try to get through the things that we do want to think about. So, and maybe the next board will take that on.
I think scheduling wise, the largest comment we heard this year was whether or not it would stay virtual for next year. I think the 7 at night is pretty comfortable for most parents, most people in general, even if, you know, administration wanted to come as well. So I don't think it's the 7 o'clock that's the issue moving forward. It's going to be if we, you know, can have hybrid meetings or if we'll stay virtual. The hybrid system is really nice to have, and so I think the Cpac wants to make use of the district's nice setup here if we wanted to have that really meaningful in-person interaction, but also ensuring that others have that flexibility of coming virtual, because it really is a nice thing to have.
So that came up in the presentation to the Cpac of this, was would we be able to reserve this room so that we could do hybrid meetings? We used to, when it was in person before, it used to be out there.
Well, one of them, yeah.
So, you know, that was something that we wanted to ask about.
And just so you know, the district, as any district in Massachusetts, has an obligation to support Cpacs and LPACs in doing their work. So this is something that is in our wheelhouse of making a space available and technology or whatever available too.
The other piece is just, and we did this, you know, asking the Office of Pupil Services to address concerns from the survey at a future Cpac meeting. It could really help build trust with the Office of Pupil Services. So just having them come back and say, hey, yep, we heard you guys, and here's some changes, or here's things we're looking at, would be helpful. All right, so Cpac involvement did increase over the last year. However, again, we're down by 50% of the respondents. So it's really hard to say, is that because people are coming to meetings? I mean, we did see some new faces. I know that there's new faces running for election this year, in fact. So it could well be that it's that. It could well be that it's just the lower number of respondents were people who were just more engaged.
Self-selecting if they're filling out the survey.
It's a self-selection piece, yep. We also ask about just kind of like, what do you all want to see as speakers, right? We have to provide basic rights and laws. Actually, we do have to provide that. There's 3 different ones we get to choose from the Federation. But we ask membership, what else do you want to do or see or hear? Executive functioning issues and support is always a perennial favorite issue that comes up. Honestly, a lot of kids struggle with it, even those who don't fall into special education. And so, like several years ago, Westford Education Foundation, is that who they were? It's Westford Parents Connection had Sarah Ward, who's fantastic. She came and spoke.
Highly attended.
Yes, highly attended. And it probably wasn't all Cpac families, right? Nope. Or special education families. Although the Cpac well, they put their name on it. They didn't really, we don't have money, so we didn't co-sponsor it. IEP and 504 questions. In fact, there's new IEP being rolled out right now, and this would be extremely good to have because it is gonna look different. And so that's just something that even before that came about, if you've looked at an IEP, they're challenging. I've been through a lot of training. Still challenging. So, and mental health issues and support, including anxiety and depression. Again, this is perennial. This is not putting aside the fact that we do like to have our chat with Courtney, and Dr. Chu came last year too, to kind of talk with us, and some of the other things that are going on. We actually did do BSEA this year, as I said. We did the transition planning. With somebody from NESCA this year. So we actually did behavior issues and support this year with Dr. Green. So we do see, we do try to hit everything on the list at some point over the course of years, which is really great. So, yes.
I just wanted to say I appreciate that, I don't know if all, but most are also open to non-Cpac families because I had never heard Dr. Green before, and I tuned in this year, and it was awesome. So I really appreciate that they're open, to other families that are interested.
that's the members. The Cpac membership is a very funky concept in general, and so it by nature is very open. I mean, the reality is that there's a lot of special education families in Westford. If you just look at Courtney's numbers, but you know, a lot of them are very quiet, and they may well be struggling with these things. And there's people who aren't even in that realm and still are struggling with those things, right? So it's really important to have. So I'm glad you got something out of it.
Oh, I did.
One of the things that the Parents Professional Advocacy League, which I do a lot of training with them, one of the things they do is sometimes they do surveys during their training. So like you can say like, oh, in the 5 minutes while we're waiting for this training to begin, you can like have a survey before that. So you kind of have this captive audience of folks who are tuning in for Dr. Ross Green, but you're like asking them like, can you take this quick survey? Like,
About communication.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that's a cool idea. For something like Dr. Ross Green, it does become a little bit challenging because the Cpacs tend to cross-pollinate and try to share, even with our basic rights and laws, right?
Well, that's true. So we had people who weren't Westford.
But you can ask the
But
question.
You can ask
Yep.
the question.
You can just
You
ask,
can
like,
ask the
are you
question,
on-
yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Just trying to
Didn't mean to
good
go
idea.
forward. That is a good idea.
Is there?
All right. So last year there's a question about additional support programs, the idea of parent-to-parent connections, sort of like people who've been through it, mentors, or just somebody who has similar challenges or whatever. And also weekly or bi-weekly online chats hosted not necessarily by the board. This actually happened early in the pandemic, where there really was a weekly or bi-weekly chat that was going on.
And it just started.
Yeah. And then obviously with everybody back to school and work and all those things, it kind of fell by the wayside. There's still a big interest in it. Okay. So that gets to my additional recommendations, and the very first one is educating on the importance of the Cpac, right? Why we're here, what we do, how we help, and specifically its reliance on volunteers. You were looking at, the two of the biggest volunteers for the Cpac this year, and okay, I helped out too, but no, and actually when I did step down as chair this year, I made a commitment to do this because I know it's a heavy load, right? But not everything is this heavy, and just, many hands, right?
Yeah.
So it was something where I really feel that having a culture of volunteering, first of all, provides better, programs that allows us to, maybe help create those parent-to-parent connections, to have people able to host weekly or bi-weekly online chats. It also helps develop future board members, and it makes leadership roles less demanding and daunting. So that's just something that is, it's a hard thing to do, developing a Cpac, but it's something that I really kind of feel would be a really big help. And then the annual recommendations to the Cpac are planning for future workshops. So from some of those ideas that you saw a couple slides ago, develop and run another joint survey and continue to look at the year-over-year trends, right? How are we doing? Are we still seeing, even for the Cpac, are people happier, less happy? What's going on there? And again, present the findings to the school committee and to the district. I think that's it.
I want to say that I know you're like this survey participation is down, but 47 people to answer a survey is a lot of people.
I know that.
I just want to say that to you because you're, especially like when there's no incentive, right? Like there's not you're not paying people for their time, and so having 47 people respond is great.
That said, I'd love to continue to try to think about other ways to get it out, because it's 47 people, but it's only 60%. So when you're talking about the validity and statistically, it's low. So if there's other ways, I like the idea of, so we send it out with principals. Is that
It went
correct,
through
on
the
Fridays?
principals. It went through the weekly bulletin board.
Yeah.
I don't think Courtney sent one, did she send it in an email?
No, it was on our email list.
Okay.
So some strategies, similar to, even if it's different than what you had mentioned, you know, what Mari had mentioned.
Was this, timing-wise, was this after we also had to do the TFM, the
Yeah,
tiered
it was
focus monitoring surveys and different things like that? Is it possible that this could be also survey fatigue a little bit?
It could be survey fatigue, although I will say that last year's survey came out and was put out in December, and if you remember the sheer number of surveys we saw from
Yeah,
September
true.
of 2020 onwards,
Yeah.
I still think it could be survey fatigue. I really think that a lot of it comes down to people just weren't feeling as like it was kind of more like these are the normal issues, right?
Yeah.
And they were just issues that they were willing to kind of face on their own if they were having issues. Maybe they weren't. Maybe it's perfect. I don't know.
I think too, it's the second year of the survey. I think it would take longer to really get a good understanding of what is our, you know, baseline, like how many families can we expect to respond? What is the best time of year to give it? How do we promote it fully to ensure that everybody comes on board? And then that education aspect to the community of why is it important that you give this feedback? You know, one of the purposes of the Cpac is that we are gathering information from the families. We want to hear their stories and their experiences. The Cpac wants to really identify systemic challenges, large issues that, you know, ways we can better the system. And to do that, we need that feedback. And so it's just an ongoing, I think the survey, it was developed last year, second year for it. It can be a very meaningful tool. And I think as we continue to do that every year, continue to get that feedback from the families in a variety of ways, is going to be really important, powerful, impactful for meaningful change to our district.
Especially if we can show that, you know, point back to something that came up in the survey and say, you know, look, here's a change, right? Even if it's not a perfect change, here's something we're doing because we did hear it, right? Whether it's Cpac or the district, being able to say there's a change that was made, and we'll check in and see how that went, but that's why it was made. That kind of adds validity to the survey as well, I think.
Other questions?
Well, I'd again just like to take the opportunity to thank Eileen for her work. She was the author of the survey. She gave the survey out. She compiled all the information. She wrote up the report that you guys have. Amazing work from her this year, and her commitment and time to Cpac families. Thank you.
That's a lot of hard work.
Thank you very much.
The presentation was really, I like the way it was presented. I think the recommendations were clear in there. I feel like it's a nice take home for us too, to look back on and say, oh, these are some really good lessons and information that you pulled out from the survey. It's great.
And you almost could, I mean, some people would stop at the slides, right? But like, there's a very official, like, professional report in there too. So, and I know that's no small feat, and everybody's plate is full. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I actually want to take the time to acknowledge all three of you. You know, I'm part of the Cpac. I join your meetings, but I know the work you've all done this year and your dedication to, you know, advocating. It's not, you know, it doesn't go unnoticed. And I know we talk about how we get more people in and get more involvement, but just the fact that knowing even we have a small group of moms willing to do it. So I think it's really important to.
And dads, there's a dad running.
We have, and
for
we've
us
got
this
we've
year.
got new people. We have new people joining just in recent weeks.
There will be a new board next
There will be a new board.
Won't be any of us.
I know.
Well, thank you for all you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Coming.
inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Informing us.
Could I just say one thing, you know,
Please.
while we're on this, you know, what I would really like to do, and it bubbled up in the evaluation process a little bit for me, is that, you know, we get presented with so much information at times, you know, throughout the year, and some of it, you know, I thought it was interesting in this, you know, and other presentations we've had from other school members, that we get this information, but we don't always see what's done with it. And what I would really like us to start doing, maybe as a committee and as a district, is actually kind of coming back and, you know, a few months in or whatever, and updating and connecting back with this information. You know, I would hate for us not to look at this information again till next year when we're getting next year's surveys. I mean, one of the things that's come up here that we've heard talked about by teachers, we've heard the school nurses, the guidance counselors all talking about anxiety, you know, in our schools, and we're not necessarily getting proactive about it. We all know it's an issue. What are we doing about it? And maybe getting a bit more specific. So I would love to see a bit more kind of proactive use of this information that we're getting at these meetings, just moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for saying. And I think it's a discussion that I mean, we've had personally, you know, I think in generally we're going to keep having, because I do think there's a sense that it's not where we want things to be. We don't want, especially when you see our youngest students, and this isn't necessarily specific to Cpac or special education families.
No.
This is, right, this is a lot of families that are feeling, at a young age even, the children are feeling stressed or not comfortable or whatever it may be. And so I think it's, you know, we don't want it to be crisis level if it isn't already. So let's keep the conversation going.
Yep.
Okay, thank you again. And yes, to that, also the point, we don't want to do this wait till next spring. I think we've started, I feel like we've done fall and spring now for a year or so now, and so we want to make sure Cpac is back here in the fall.
Yeah, ask the board to come in the fall too. I'm just kind of, November's usually good, you know, kids are getting rolling, and and talk about what happened and what they're doing, what
Great.
their plans are for the year.
Actually,
November is CPAC Awareness Month.
That's right.
Actually, one other thing that popped up is that maybe we should consider with the DEI team, the school one. I realized recently we don't have like a Cpac representative on the DEI team, and I think we really should have, because DEI is all inclusive. So maybe it's something worth considering for next year, if we could find a volunteer.
I will say we have had, I just want to be clear that
Yeah.
there has been people representing. Cpac hasn't had an official representative, but there have been people. We are very, because I think what you also said is you just heard from people who are saying they can't find enough people to volunteer to help. So at the same time, I'm like, wait, we have been cognizant of saying, okay, who's coming to the table to have these conversations? Yeah.
Thanks. And we'll see you in the fall, except it won't be you three. So you've made that clear. It won't be you three in the fall.
You're welcome to be there.
But please come anyway, and yeah, thanks. And we are really on time, so kudos on the timing too on the presentation. Perfect. We're up to the superintendent evaluation, and I had a bunch of preambles. I'm gonna look at the email I sent, because that had the nice preamble. That had all the like my little notes on like, you know, how it's different this year. So if you bear with me, I'm gonna pull that up. So, as you know, we've been compiling the evaluation for a couple of weeks. Catherine has done a lot of the work, and I have helped. And it's different this year. So a couple things are different. We haven't done it in a couple of years. It's the new, we hadn't done the focus indicators before, so that was new to us. And so I think we spent some time just kind of feeling that out. I think there's some things, and I'm just talking process now, that we would have told the committee 4 weeks ago. We're like, that would have been good to know when we were filling it out. That just, we haven't done it in so long. So one of the big differences is in the past we had taken everybody's comments and just sort of cut and paste them in one form. So it's all, you know, sort of unfiltered, people's names next to it. Based on the recommendations from the state and best practices, we decided to do the sort of one voice, as you saw. I think it came through. But that creates a situation where you're trying to represent a broad swath of feelings and ideas and thoughts and feedback. And so that was an interesting challenge for us to figure out, to walk our way through that. Like, how do we incorporate everybody, you know, everybody's different ideas and really capture it. And it wasn't easy, but I'm pretty happy with what we have. And so, you know, I want the committee to talk about it and see how we feel about it, since this is the first time we've done that. But we tried not to, if there was information that felt like a one-off or outlier, we said, well, maybe that doesn't go in. You know, the individual evaluations will still retain that, but we want to make sure it's themes, right? It's themes, its patterns and things like that.
Best practice for that
Best
from the
practice, yeah.
MASC is a comment has to be made by 2 members for it to make it to the cumulative.
Yeah.
So we tried to follow that.
Or at least a theme, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I know there were
Yeah, they
instances.
might not say the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are times when there was a theme, and then somebody would have a very specific example
Right.
that they were the only one who said, but it's like, oh, but this ties in, this directly like bolsters this thing that everybody's saying. So again, this is all process. I thank the committee for the feedback. I think we learned a lot about the process. I think it'll be a lot easier next year. I actually think if we, by doing this composite, it takes a little pressure off the individual members. This is my theory. I said this theory today. To like write something that's beautiful, like this beautiful, full, self-standing evaluation versus like, oh, here are my thoughts. Here, my bullet points, or here are my thoughts, and knowing that we hopefully will have a subcommittee who can then take those and make the final evaluation. So. Again, I said I would start with process just because I think it's important to ground ourselves on where we are and how we ended up this year with a little bit of a different evaluation.
And I think it's worth just to note, I know we're talking about process, that we as a school committee probably, didn't let the ball drop. I don't know, this year we kind of, I suppose because it was a new superintendent, because it's slightly different when it's a new superintendent and stuff. So, we've learned a lot in going, oh, actually, we should have done X, Y, and Z at this point in the year, so moving forward, it's going to be perfect next year.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Set us up for that, yeah. So for anybody who's looking at the evaluation, the top few pages are very kind of summative, and they really do, it's the one voice, we really did combine everything there. But if you go down, you'll actually see like when people have particular ratings, you'll see kind of a tally of people's ratings, so you can get a sense of the breadth of those. I think that was all I was going to say. Oh, and I think what we would do is give you everybody's individual forms, so you can see the full range of comments. And so we'll send those to you as well. So
Oh,
you'll have
okay,
those.
great.
We haven't done that yet, though. And with that, I thought it might be good then just to hear a little bit from the committee. I know hopefully everyone had a chance to look at what we ended up with. I think if people want to talk about, their thinking on some of the things or highlight certain things from the year that stood out, this would be a great time to do that. Eventually we'd get to a point where I want us to vote as a committee to if it's accept or approve. I guess approve the evaluation, since not everyone wrote it, right? Like a subset of us wrote it, so I think it's important, and Desi kind of backed this up for us, it's important that the committee officially approve that. And so it's a chance to talk about what we see in there, what we saw for the year, and yeah, I guess I would open it up for folks. I know there's something else I was going to say, but maybe you're going to say it.
Just to note as well, with what I was saying about the doing it right next year, the student learning goal we don't have because we didn't set one this year, and we we had 2 district improvement goals as opposed to 4. So there are some parts that aren't kind of filled out for people at home who are kind of wondering. So we've only evaluated on what we set the goals for this year.
And I was just going to add that,
Yep.
that those are boilerplate.
Yeah.
For anyone following along at home,
Yeah.
I feel like we all know this now, but that those 3 goals are basically verbatim for new superintendents. So that's where that came from. I think if there is a shared responsibility, you hinted at this, that neither the committee nor Dr. Chu foresaw the sort of missing student learning goal as part of that, but so that's why that's blank.
Yep.
Who are you?
I should sign in, yes, nobody else.
2 minutes, public comment.
And so,
Wherever I'm
You
going.
want a super slideshow?
we talked about this at the last meeting, maybe the last 2 meetings, but Alicia was kind enough to also fill out an evaluation since she had the bulk of the year experience. And so we are thankful for that and for you joining us tonight.
So I would also say, to add on to what Valerie was saying, was when we had the workshop with Dorothy Presser this summer, we talked about how you set goals for a superintendent who is literally building their entry plan. And a lot of what she told us was, yes, the rubric itself does contain more places where you can fill things in, but when you have an entering superintendent, generally you pull the goals from their entry plan to begin with, because you don't want them doing two paths of goals and, you know, evaluation of those goals. You want it to sort of be the same thing. So she told us over the summer that you won't necessarily have a fully fleshed out if you had a superintendent who had been here for 5 years. You will have, based on their entry plan, those goals that you've pulled from the entry plan. So it was sort of expected that it would be a little bit different this year, and then add to that the entire different process that it's, you know, this summative thing that they put together. And I have even retaken charting the course, and I still stared at this for an entire weekend, and I was like, I'm not sure I've checked the right thing.
I have given MASC feedback going, next time you do this, can you actually fill in the form as part of the training? Because that's,
show us more,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Like John Doe had this goal.
Yeah.
Here's how we're gonna fill it in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chris Chu looks nervous.
We were like burying the lead, right?
I've already read it, but
Yeah.
your preamble made it like, oh my gosh, what's about to
That's what
happen?
we've been like wrestling with. Is like, how do we do this
like, how do
process? Like, you know.
Well, this is as weird as listening to 7 people talk about finalists.
Yeah.
Your entire, I mean, it's a little weird. I don't know how many people actually have.
But I will say,
Public.
like, just to draw an analogy, because Cpac just left, I can imagine that this is what an IEP meeting feels like. And so it's something that I think about a lot when the kids go to them, or like when the parents go to them. Like, you're talking about them. So this is like a little learning moment for us.
So far, it's all been process stuff. So
It is
like I said,
process.
we haven't
However,
gotten to the-
this is public.
Yeah.
That to me is the difference. It's just, and I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's a different experience than.
But I think it was more just, well, I know where I was coming from. I don't want to speak for anybody else. Was, I would be, through many conversations I've had with community members, over the last year when I was campaigning and since, was just how important the evaluation process is to them. And so knowing that, it felt really important to me that we create an evaluation process that's really transparent and trustworthy and balanced and fair. And also, what's the point of this? The whole point of it is that it comes back, not necessarily on you. I think of it more as what comes out of this should absolutely impact the classroom and for our kids, because that's what this does. It comes up with goals and ideas and improvement, for our plans and school plans and stuff. So I just felt that this is more a kind of to create that trust and transparency in it, and actually make it a useful document that we get something out of it, that it's
So-
not just on paper.
Right.
I just wanted to add too, from the process point of view, and speak, sort of following off on that, this document should really feed into the next round of goals, right? Like that would really be the best practice, is that districts that are, doing an evaluation and then looking for that to create, where's the next focus indicators, where are you gonna, because you can't be productive on 20 different indicators, right? So that's their whole recommendation, to focus on 6 to 8. You can't progress in 20 areas. Pick 6 to 8 that you can over the year and have your goals in those areas. So I think that that's really helpful to know that we're going to try to kick this off and trickle down into a better process moving forward.
I think and something actually to what Marisol was just saying too, like the other thing is, for people who are reading this for the first time and who are seeing it for the first time, this is how this is the educator evaluation system, right?
Yeah.
So we have Christine sitting here with us right now, and like this is what this is. It's different indicators, but it's the same amount of categories that the teachers set goals, the administrators set goals. There's indicators that go along with it. So it's actually that is something that is a very private process again too. But so it might be nice for parents to know that, oh wait, wow, all of our educators actually get this complete of a document that also should then be used to be reflective, to move forward, to grow. Yeah.
It's usually private. Christine, we brought yours up, so we're going to take a look at yours.
As an example.
As an example. We blacked out your name, though, so don't worry, nobody knows. I thought of something else I wanted to say. Well, first of all, again, bearing the lead. And I really, again, the committee has seen this and read this. You have seen this and read this. I encourage people at home to take a look, especially at those first few pages that sort of give you the big picture view. It's a proficient for the year as the summative rating. And my sense is that's not a given for a first-year superintendent. I mean, we got feedback from MASC. We had discussions about what needs improvement means, and it was made very clear, and it's made clear from the state that needs improvement might mean something different. And in fact, some school committees will actually change the form and call that developing. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something important for people. I mean, you know this, but for people at home to understand, especially for a first-year superintendent, that needs improvement is a developing, which just, it has a slightly different flavor to it. But, there is an expectation that there's a lot of learning going on in that first year. And so I think the overall bottom line is that it was a really productive and successful year, and I think that came through in the evaluation and what we said. So I feel like that's something to celebrate as a committee and as a superintendent. Yeah. That it was not an easy year, and we really maintained momentum. And I think it was Gloria in her evaluation said not only that we accelerated in a lot of areas, and that's not nothing. So we appreciate that. With that, I guess I would open it if people want to talk about specifics about the evaluation itself, or comments that they have, or thoughts that they've had through the process. I know that's a way we've done it in the past, if that feels comfortable for folks. If people are happy with what's in there and just want to leave it as that works as well. It's really up to the committee.
I'll go for it. I
Okay.
really like sitting here. I haven't sat here I've sat here a couple times, but I would say, having done this multiple years in a row now with different rubrics and different superintendents, and now in a new district, I have not done the evaluation with Neshoba Tech, but watching sort of how they interact with their superintendent, I think it's worth considering putting together, MASC said you could do a subcommittee for the evaluation. I think it's worth considering doing that for next year. Because I think you set the goals, you get the updates on the goals, and then you hit the spring and you're like, oh my God, here comes the rubric. And I think if you had a subcommittee that was sort of working along that route the entire year, it would be, I would think, much more like the rest of our educator evaluator processes, where it doesn't all come at the end. You're sort of making progress, you're checking in as the year goes, and it would probably be a slightly less painful experience once you get to the end. And I think it helps keep everyone on track, especially since, like, when we're talking about your goals for this year, we could evaluate you on any number of things, but you present the committee with goals. The committee evaluates you on those goals. And then we have a discussion about everything else. So to make that clear from the very beginning with a subcommittee, I think would be beyond helpful.
I was almost suggesting that what would have been really helpful is almost, when we're setting the goals, we almost complete like the tables and kind of set it up to begin with, because I think it would have been so much easier and kind of very, what's the word? Oh, I'm blanking. It just would have make us more focused and specific, and kind of start us off on the right track.
Yes.
Yeah. It is different that the form that you have, like for just this end result, that is a difference, where we use Teach Point with all of our educators that has multiple forms in it, where that's one way of communicating between the evaluator and the evaluatee, right? In terms of setting goals, in terms of providing evidence and different things like that. And they haven't really created that for the superintendent.
And with what regularity is that,
It depends. It depends. So because it depends on the type of cycle that the educator might be on. It depends on whether it's their first time working with this evaluator or not. We have certain deadlines that people are supposed to hit to have certain things completed, but then there's also just the informal conversations based on the observations that'll be taking place and things like that as well too.
we definitely decided, I think.
Yeah.
Too much time is spent worrying about that form and fitting things into it. I think top on my list would be creating either our own form that's flexible or doing some other sort of tool.
Which we can do, like
Which we can do. We're not,
yeah.
we're not tied to that.
We're
It
not
needs to
tied-
cover the
we
same
need to
things.
cover but we found examples of other districts
But I
and
think
how
that
they
would be
had laid it out.
The
and-
first order of business,
in a
because it's just too
Word
much time is
document.
spent on the individual level, yes,
Yeah.
for the subcommittee, the individuals and for the
I like subcommittees.
compilers.
Another one?
One thing I know that we had a question on was when you identified your focus indicators, you went down to the element level. And I don't know if that's the recommended practice, but it felt, I think, when we were evaluating, especially since we only had 4 focus indicators, so there's really 1 per standard, and it was at the element level. So it felt like such a small slice for an entire standard. And I don't know if that's something next year, and if that's...
Well, do you remember, we spoke with Dorothy about the element level, and she was saying that was a previous kind of rubric that came up.
The rubric, but
and now...
But for the superintendent to select at the element level to be the focus indicator, I wonder if it makes more sense to do it just at the indicator level.
In the indicator level, I think.
Yeah,
is
we
what-
certainly can do that. I do think that can be a typical process when you're working with teachers, right? In terms of even providing the feedback, right? So like when I'm providing feedback to a teacher, I might identify a very specific element and use that language as I'm providing the recommendation and or the feedback. And their goal might be linked to a very specific indicator and element. So therefore that then becomes, it never means that you can't provide information about other things, right? But when you talk about the focusing aspect of it, it is kind of saying to everybody, yeah, this is what I'm focused on. And I did think that that's what I was supposed to do. Yeah.
Okay.
So a process question out of sheer professional curiosity. When you did your goals, you were clearly working with your MASS mentor. Thank you. I could not think of that word. Will you is it part of the process to take this back to your mentor and sort of review it with them? Because I know they started the process with you. Is it part of the process to then take your evaluation back to them?
Yeah, so I have my coach for 3 years.
Oh, fantastic.
And so I know that, like, I'm already sharing this with him because we'll want to talk about it anyway as regard. But I guess that's kind of the practice. Like when we're talking about this, that's my expectation. Having been an evaluator for the last 7 years here in this district, and then previously, it's like I expect that the evaluation then becomes a reflective practice to then say, okay, well, how can this inform?
Yeah.
How can this inform the future? Yeah.
That's excellent. That feels very, using the information to its most valuable. I like that. That's great.
But also, you would be hoping that this also informs the goal setting, maybe that's over the summer, because I know best practices, we really have this presented then in the fall, so that this document, it's not that we're around having meetings over the summer, so that there's some guidance.
Right.
You want to come back for summer meetings?
Oh, no, I already have my new schedule for the summer. I'm good. I have meetings all summer.
Oh, God.
Okay, well, I'll dive into the meat of it, I guess, if we need a kicking off point. I will say that I struggled, this was my first one, right, because last year, you don't do one for an outgoing superintendent. And I did not take this lightly. I think I spent like a cumulative almost as much on this as I did throughout the budget process. And I felt okay with that because it's one of our 3 state mandated responsibilities, right? Like it's a big deal. And it's not just personal, right? It's about where the district is going and areas to identify for growth and opportunity. And so I actually retook some webinars and went back through the slides to make sure that I was looking at the tool and understood what it was asking me. And I thought just a couple notes that I made during the training really resonated that might help if we end up sharing our individuals, right? That might help you understand where I came from. So one of the notes I made was that, the point is not to give a grade, it's just to give feedback on how you're doing and how you can improve, and it's not a likability score. It's sorry, lost my train of thought. But I think the district is headed in a positive direction. I know there's been very valuable work happening this year. But when I was digging into it, I felt that a lot of the process really ties back to evidence and measurables. And that's where I really struggled to reach proficient in my personal ratings. And whether that's sort of a miss through the mentor or the NSIP program, right? But I just felt like there was a lot of, that there were critical things missing that normally the superintendent would present to us, a self-evaluation, and really documented evidence for each of like the benchmarks from your December goals that would help really demonstrate that something has been done. And I think that's really valuable because a performance review can become sort of subjective, right? And tying it to measurables and evidence is the way to really hone that into an objective rating. One little anecdote from one of the trainings was there was an audience question to the panel about, you might get a chuckle out of this, but why isn't there like a community survey as part of the superintendent rating, right? Like, let's let the district grade you.
Right.
And obviously, one of the responses was that you would get really two ends of the spectrum. You're going to get into the Cpac survey point of view, right? Any survey.
Yeah.
You're going to get people who are raving and then people who have a grievance and not a lot in the middle. And so to me, that's why it's up to the 7 of us and not a public poll, but it's also why I'm more looking forward to that better process that's tied really to that evidence. What are you presenting to us that you've done? One of the other learnings I thought about for improving the process throughout the year with maybe a subcommittee, but some of the districts that do this in best practice is they actually list on their agenda. Like if you were giving a presentation in the middle of the year about something related to your goals, right, like in our little italic subheading might say, this is tied to goal number, da, da, da.
Yeah.
Right.
And then sometimes other districts have a special digital folder where that presentation would go, so that later in the spring we're like, oh, where's all that evidence? Here's the folder, right? So like creating that sort of digital, that folder of evidence I think is really helpful. And without, that felt really lacking in this process this year, so I look forward to that kind of being bolstered.
Yeah, I would just say it wasn't a part of that of the process this year, because I think that's a good, that is good feedback. I was told that the first year superintendent is about the entry plan, these goals, this is a boilerplate, if you will, right? This is what everybody should be doing.
Right.
I think you're right. I think that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about the district improvement plan, is that it is so similar to the school improvement plans, and the way that, at least for a number of years, I don't think I did it all the time, but I know for the last couple of years, I always connected all of our SAC agendas to our school improvement goals. So this meeting is goal 3 or whatever, you know what I mean, and different things like that. So I think it's very similar. The flip side being, I also, because I read that in the responses, and I thought, oh, it's definitely true. There wasn't a lot of evidence there. And that's why I think the subcommittee is super important, because the other piece of that is that as an evaluator, there's been many times when I've been working with a teacher and I didn't see the evidence, and I wasn't going to make their evaluation about an assignment, right, that they were asked to do. So I would then ask them, do you have more? I see you're talking about this, but I'm not necessarily seeing anything there. So I feel like we didn't know to do that.
Right. We didn't close the loop.
So that's good. That's important. Yeah.
I especially because this is such a public process,
Right.
that being able to stand behind a proficient because of this evidence,
Yeah.
right, is I think really crucial for making this transparent and accountable
Yeah.
to the public.
No, I think it's good.
And just, mine was the same in terms of the exact reasoning I went through, is kind of looking again for kind of that evidence. And so, there was some I felt like Chris had said at the start, that it's not needs improvement, more developing is really how I approached it. And I think when I heard that kind of phrase, it really crystallized a little bit more better for me. I did struggle as well. I put a lot of time and effort trying to figure it out. And so that for me, again, it wasn't a reflection on like a likability thing. It was more just purely an objective way, and looking for more information and evidence as we go along. So that's just my thoughts.
Sean?
So I know we spent a lot of time talking about this and the rubric and the like. I always struggle with these things because I don't like putting things into buckets, right? Like, I just don't. I mean, I'm not, maybe it's an executive functioning disorder, but I tend to try to be like a big picture person, and I found that part just writing kind of holistically about where my gut thought that you were as a leader and where we were as a district. That was a lot easier for me. And I think overall, at least my feeling was positive. You know, I won't get into the specifics. You can spend as much time as you want reviewing that, but yeah, I've been here for 3 years. This has been one of the toughest, you know, and it's your first year, so you've certainly been battle tested early on in your career as a leader. So kudos.
And we know not to say, oh, next year will be a breeze.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So we know
That's like
not
saying
to say
it'll be a
that.
short meeting.
Yeah, right. No.
Oh, you've got Gloria there.
Oh, go ahead, Gloria.
I couldn't read the room, so I wasn't sure like who was on deck.
No, that's perfect.
But I did want to chime in as from the voice from beyond. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. And I think there's been a really good discussion tonight about process and about lessons, I think, for all of us for next year. But I don't want in the process conversation for us to lose the big picture of this was a really positive year. It was a really productive year. A lot of amazing things happened this year. And I think there's a lot of growth areas and shared goals that this committee has with Dr. Chu that we can continue to collaborate and work together on. I love the idea of having a subcommittee discuss this throughout the process. I think it'll also be worth bearing in mind that I would not want this process to bog down the daily tasks that we want our superintendent focused on. I mean, we want our superintendent focused on the needs of the district, the needs of our staff, the needs of our students, the needs of the people. And I think we need to recognize that there are some trade-offs in terms of things like developing evidence. And we just need to be thoughtful about that we don't become so focused on the rubric and the form and the evidence that we lose, you know, the forest for the trees. The big picture here is the district moving forward in a positive direction? And I think the answer for that this year is a resounding yes.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you.
Alicia.
So I would agree that I feel like could there have been more data? Absolutely. But we're also talking about a first-year superintendent. We're talking about an entry plan that was turned into this rubric. And this rubric serves districts fairly well when you have a superintendent who's been around for a while and you can have continuing goals, when you have a goal process. When you have to take an entry plan and jam it into this rubric, I think you come up with the meeting we're having tonight. You want, sort of like you said, the overall impression, but you also want the data. I think this form does not lend itself well to evaluating a first-year superintendent. It just doesn't. Overall, I personally felt like there was enough data. I would love more data, but I felt like there was enough data based on what the goals were. The goals were survey families and be in the buildings and things like that. I'm sorry, that's my phone. Hold on. It's technically Turn in time, everyone turn off.
I was going to
Oh,
say,
nice.
is that your
Okay,
going
well-
to sleep time?
Right.
Meeting's done.
Turn off the owl.
Sorry about that.
See you next week.
That's, everyone needs to turn in their switches and stop playing. So I feel like it's a weird place for us to be in because the rubric doesn't fit a first year. But you still need to have the goals for a first year. And honestly, could there have been like those focus indicators, like you said, could there have been a more finely tuned use of the focus indicators? Sure. But what it comes down to is it's a first year superintendent being evaluated with a rubric that is not intended to evaluate a first year superintendent. And on the whole, there has been, I would say, excellent progress made this year. I never would have expected the curriculum, the equity and inclusion curriculum director to have happened this year. That was fantastic. But that wasn't in this, that wasn't on the goals. So it's a balance of the overall impression, the very specific goals, feeling like there is that box you have to check, but it doesn't line up well with a first year superintendent evaluation. Overall, my impression is, yes, the district is heading where it should be heading. It was for everything that has happened this year, it was a good year. And I think a lot of progress is being made. And I wish this evaluation had not been the way that we had been evaluating you this year, because I feel like it doesn't quite line up with what your steps were this year, what your goal setting could have been. I don't know who to talk to about the MASC about the rubric, but I don't like the rubric.
I think Desi, though, comes at it saying, like, the rubric, it's whatever lens you look at it. I mean, I didn't feel we struggled in terms of, understanding that it was different goals. So it's the same kind of former and the same kind of idea. It's just different goals. I'll be honest in that, my struggle was that I found, in general, some of the information just over the year we didn't have. And, we didn't set these goals, and Dr. Chu, you presented us with, and you kind of said these were going to be kind of the information provided. And so when that's not provided, that's where I kind of had to come down and kind of say, well, I can't make a decision one way or the other in one sense because the information's not there. But Desi does say that you can adjust this form for, a new superintendent. You tweak it or whatever, and maybe, a proficient is different for a first-year superintendent than a, expert, 15-year veteran superintendent as well. So, it's through a different lens. So,
And I didn't participate in this process, right, because I'm new. But I do evaluate lots of people in my work, and I think that some of the things that we've talked about in this meeting are not different from other environments. So the idea that goals evolve over time, or a year is a long period of time, and what you originally cited is not what you end up with. And so the idea that you were saying about communicating more frequently, and that's why I asked, Chris Chu about how many times do you communicate with teachers about this? Because as much as we don't want to teach to the test, right, we also want to make sure that we're in communication. So I think that, the management consultant that I work with in my day job was quarterly, which I think can be kind of a lot, but at least twice a year, have a check-in and say you could say, my new goal is X and this goal is moot and whatever, and have a little touch point in the middle so that you're not getting to the finish line with kind of being this is moot, this is new, I did this, so I just think that might feel, better all around to folks.
And that's kind of on school committee, because we're supposed to have, our policy says it, and all the good practice says we're supposed to have a mid-year check-in, but we didn't. So that's, I know.
And I think part of that was because of the newness. So what you were talking about is the digital file. That's where the digital file would be the most useful, because you would put your goals on the table in September. We would know that there was a mid-year evaluation coming, and then you could see in the digital file as you approach that. But because the entry plan and everything else, there wasn't that same structure of goal, mid-year, end of year. So
I just want to step back too and say this conversation to me is it's great. Such an important, valuable conversation that I haven't had on this committee ever during an evaluation. Again, I know that we're talking about process a lot, but I think that everything's process, right? So this is how we help develop our process, our relationship, our goals as a committee and as a district and as superintendent going forward, and we'll reap benefits. And I know I said this to Catherine multiple times the past few days as we were like, okay, what do we do with it? Okay, I said, I feel so much, regardless, even though we're in the middle of it, we're like, where do we go? I felt so much better about what we were creating than in the past, where we just threw things together. I like that we were. It takes a lot more effort, for a subcommittee or whoever it may be, to go through and really try to. Again, I recommend the narrative, and I want to talk about that. If people have comments on the narrative, we should talk about those. But I think that's where you get the overall picture. That's hopefully a good encapsulation of the year, the performance, the thoughts of the committee, and things like that. And so it's a challenge to get there, but.
And honestly, I think we were both coming at it from kind of different lenses and different perspectives. And when we started, I was like, I have no idea where this is going to end up. But I said to you on the phone this morning, I think we've put together a really solid, evaluation that encapsulates, the kind of the spirit of everything, and and it's a very positive evaluation. It's a good evaluation, I think so.
And hopefully one that the committee and you feel does capture the year that was.
Yeah, I think the putting it together as one voice, I think just as a document is great. It's very helpful for all of you to know, because unlike most of us, yes, we'll partner with other evaluators if there are a couple of us overseeing somebody, but there's still only one person who's actually responsible for that evaluation, whereas you had to calibrate in ways that is difficult, right? And it is very helpful. I think having the numbers underneath is also helpful for the community to understand that people were coming from different places, but it's also not individualized with like it used to be with the initials and things like that. So I feel like it is helpful. In any process, there will be years when we might there will be times when the committee will very much want me to have a goal, and then there'll be times when I will say this is what I think the goal should be. Sometimes that'll be the same. Sometimes it'll be a little bit different. That happens with educators all the time. There might be something where the educators totally they've set the goals and we're just supporting them in that work, and then they might be like, it might be a 2-year. That actually happened quite a bit for us, even just with even before COVID, when all of a sudden someone will be on a 2-year cycle and their goals just aren't applicable to the second year because of some circumstances that have changed. So then you say, okay, well, we're going to adjust and we'll make those kind of changes and things. So I feel like, as in all things, the conversation that's involved with the evaluation process is the most important thing. As an evaluator, that's always been my focus. I would often even say, as we discussed, and then I would have the final, because we are talking about an individual, right? I would have the final product would come after that conversation. And so the fact if we have a subcommittee going on that has check-ins along the way, that can be helpful for a number of reasons. It can be helpful for both formally and informally, and then it helps all of you. I appreciate the time that everybody put into it. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness, and the idea that you might not be responsible for all that wordsmithing hopefully will relieve some pressure. To Chris's point, like, you could get back to just kind of individual thoughts, but I just know that how difficult that is to try to word something so that the message is clear and supportive.
I'm curious, I know you've only had it a few hours, but have you any thoughts or feedback for us on kind of even just the form itself, or have you found it useful in giving you some feedback or information?
The information, I don't think, I wasn't surprised, right? So, I think that's good, right? So that I'm reading, I'm going, okay, these are the things that were articulated. The only thing that did surprise me was the concern about evidence, only because I never even went into it thinking that I needed to give you more than the entry plan. And so then this discussion is, so then that was kind of my feeling is what I shared after Valerie had shared that, is that if there's a concern, And kind of to Gloria's point, right, like you don't want it to become about this assignment that's outside of the work that we're doing, then I think if we have more timeliness, then if people need more, then there's time for that. So I feel like that's helpful.
We would be wrong, though, to consider it an assignment outside, though. I think
Yeah.
that we have to remember what this does is reflect the district, like Chris
Right.
kept saying, you know, through the process. This really is the district, you know, what the goals we set, you know, for you, like, should absolutely trickle down to the classrooms, you know, in some shape or form. So,
Agreed.
you know, it's worth the time and effort to make sure that what happens in there truly does make an impact and a difference.
But that
Yeah.
needs to be articulated as to what's expected then, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Because what you have is you do have scenarios where people will do excellent paperwork.
Yeah.
That doesn't translate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like, every evaluation that I've ever written always talks about what I've observed, right? It always includes what I've actually seen, in addition to then what somebody has shared with me that I might not be aware of, because I might not have, and there might be aspects of things, and so that'll be a great thing for us to talk about moving forward. Will be, okay, well, what are those things that you might not see that I really need to make sure that we're talking about, that the district is doing these things? Because I feel like that, it's that focus that's important.
Well, one of them, like, key point was, like, the educator plans. I think it was in, like, doing observations, you know, I know you were going into the schools, I know you've been
Right.
having conversations, and I suppose I was like, you know, we would never be privy to that information, and I understand that, but maybe where that can come up was more, I was like, I know we've had the conversation, you've been in the school, and you've spoken about maybe what the class was reading or something like that, but maybe it's worth having just a conversation, like a summary. You know what, the school in general, I really like something that they're doing, or more of a summative overall. That's not an individual, but that kind of just speaks a little bit more to kind of best practice you're seeing in the school, or say, you know what, I noticed at Miller last week, you know, they don't have this, or maybe it's something, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily have to be formal. Yeah.
Right, and over time, that might be things, though, that you are just aware of, though,
Yeah.
that you become aware of as well, too, because you'll see, oh, wait a second, I know that this was addressed.
Yeah.
I know that this positive feedback or this area of growth has been addressed, because you've seen it. But you need that evidence.
GoPro.
Through GoPro.
That wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. Yeah, do you mind if I'm just gonna?
So Valerie's been like waiting to, but I do want to follow up with that, because I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Is I think, and I also think we talked about this, there's discrepancy depending on, like, as chair, there were things where, like, oh, I know he's doing that, oh, I know he's doing that, I know he's doing that, where somebody else may have no visibility into, like, I mean, we think that's happening, but we're not sure. And I think we've talked a lot about the goals, but I find it harder on the performance standards, because the goals, we list benchmarks on them, right? So, like, okay, we think we know what we're going to see or whatever. With the performance standards, and I do think going to the focus indicators helps, because we've been deliberate about doing things that make sense and will be hopefully visible. But I know in past years, I just go down the list, when we had to do every focus indicator, I would just go down the list and be like, I don't know, maybe, maybe he's doing that, I don't know. So it's a challenge to keep in mind.
So now this might come out disjointing, because I feel like I had a reaction to something someone said and tried to make a note so I wouldn't forget it, and now of course it's probably gone. But I was reflecting on, Catherine was saying, like, that when her and Chris got together, she came at it from two different lenses, and, like, you know, whether you're coming at it from evidence-based or your gut, I think one of the things that we can look forward to is that as we make that more communicative and clear and transparent, is when we narrow down the focus indicators and talk about the evidence we expect to see, and I don't think of evidence as a homework or a checklist that is extra. It's how can I know that this goal is moving the district forward?
Right.
What's the outcome of this?
Work product.
Yeah, and, the point was that once we have those conversations up front, it actually helps align the seven of us, right? So that we're all looking at the same type of thing, instead of saying, I saw this as chair, or I have this gut, or I talked to this community member, because for every, I think I was just trying to be aware that for every sort of positive interaction we've seen, there's probably a family that feels like they wouldn't agree with proficient, right?
Right.
And so, to me, the evidence comes from being able to stand by that as a school committee member to say, here's why. And that rating made sense. You may not have watched that meeting, or you may not have seen this outcome, but here's what, what really happened. Oh man, something's gone, but that's right. And the other, I think I missed this in my earlier remarks about the self-assessment, and was feedback, right? Because we are not there day to day in central office. We see you every other Monday night. And that was really, in all of the training materials, feedback from your leadership team was really part of the expectation. And Desi has some template surveys that could become part of this process too, so that we can get that from the people who spend, the daily activities with you. So I think that's going to be really helpful moving forward.
I do think that's a good idea, because I feel like we do, even though we did not include it in the teacher evaluation, the student surveys of teachers is something that we expect people to be reflecting on, right? And so I think the idea of you actually getting feedback from the leadership team is helpful. I did do the 360 leadership survey, which I'm going to be sharing with the leadership team over the summer as well too. That's about their feedback on my leadership, but also their reflections of the leadership team as well too. And I will say that was something that was recommended that I not share with the school committee, because it wasn't something that they thought necessarily, that whole thing, not the feedback about their feedback about my leadership, but the aspect of their talking about the team, the dynamics of that. And so I was like, oh, okay, so that's something, but that doesn't help at this moment in time. But I feel like that's something, I think you having a tool to survey, get responses from people is effective, because then you also, like you do with any survey, you look at it and you look to see, okay, well, is this data valid?
And to say though on the survey, Chris, in honest, and I'll have a hard conversation. It was mentioned in our goals in the memo that specifically a spring survey, so it was something that you had highlighted, and that's what I struggled even with a little bit more. That okay, maybe I should have kept this in mind, or come back in and said, oh, I know we were supposed to be doing this, but it was something we had highlighted that didn't happen. That I think would have really been a huge bit of information for me when I was filling it out.
Right.
Gloria has her hand up.
Hey, Gloria.
Thank you for noticing me. I think that one of the interesting things that's coming out of this conversation is that different people may have different definitions of what evidence is. And I felt like I was surprised by some of the comments from some committee members that they didn't feel that there was sufficient evidence, because I felt like I had a lot of evidence based on my observations at meetings every 2 weeks and just observing Dr. Chu's interactions with all of the staff members who came to present to us over that period of time, and all of our informal interactions that maybe happened between those formal meetings. So I guess I wasn't looking for the written evidence paperwork that I recognized that maybe some other committee members were. And I think that's partially on us as a school committee to set clear expectations at the beginning of the process and maybe communicate that throughout the process. So I think we're all learning a lot about ourselves and about the process, and can certainly improve on the process for next year, and that will not only improve the evaluation process, but will improve our communication with each other as a committee and with the superintendent in terms of our goal setting and our vision for the district overall. And at the end of the day, that's what's really important about this process. So with that said, I also do want to really thank Catherine and Chris for all of the time that went in on this, because I know we all individually wrestled with this form and spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make this form, which doesn't necessarily fit for a first-year superintendent somehow mesh and line up with this process for this particular year. And then on top of that, the committee took on the challenge of creating a consensus document, which we haven't done previously, but I think is a really positive thing to do, and and must have been very daunting. So thank you to Catherine and Chris for all of the time that went into formulating this document. And with that said, even though I am voice from beyond enforcing the roll call votes, I think maybe it's time to put a motion on the table, and I will make a motion that the committee accept the consensus document as it is presented in our packet.
Was there Sean seconded it. Was there a verb in that motion? I think I missed it.
Accept.
Well, I moved it, so yes, I'm moving that we accept. I think I used the word accept.
I somehow missed
As
accept.
it was in the
Thank you.
packet.
Exactly. I think that's what on the agenda, that we accept the consensus
Perfect.
evaluation as presented in the packet.
Okay,
Accept.
thank you. So I have that motion. I have Sean with the second. You had your hand up, Alicia. Do you feel like
I wanted to echo what Gloria said about the conversation that is being had in this room is very clearly reflected in that narrative. And that narrative, when I first saw the MASC switch to that, I was like, this is going to be disastrous in some districts, because some voices will get drowned out, there will be arguments. This is you can hear all the voices in that narrative, and I think that was a really impressive job, well done, because that alone in this was terrifying to me. I have no idea how you did it. Well done.
and I want to highlight before we vote, I just think this conversation, we talk about like leadership qualities, I think, and I think these words show up maybe in the evaluation support, continuous learning and humility. And I think from you, listening to the feedback, giving feedback back, us as a committee being like, this is a process that we're looking to improve upon, and we will. And so I think that's, the most you can ask, really. And so I appreciate everybody.
I thought Alicia was putting her hand up because she wanted to make the motion.
I don't think she can. No. To be honest, I'm not
That's
accepting
why I'm
motions from
enjoying
Alicia.
sitting right here. I do not know.
So I'm gonna vote.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. You're welcome to abstain. if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, Sean?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Valerie?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
And you're abstaining?
Yeah.
Okay, abstention for Mari. That's 6-0, 601. And
Oh, yeah.
I really appreciate all that.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
And Alicia,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Alicia.
We'll see you next week, same time. We'll find a reason for you to be here.
I will see you all on Saturday.
I will see you on
I will
Saturday.
see you at
You
town
don't want to
meeting.
stay to talk about policy?
I would, but this is already my second meeting of the night,
Oh,
so
my.
I'm going to turn into a pumpkin.
Thank you again,
Bye, Alicia.
Alicia.
Good to
Thank
see you
you.
all.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Alicia.
Policies.
When do we turn in our electronics now?
9:30. 9:30 is bedtime. You have 7 minutes.
There we
All right,
go.
we better hurry.
Speed it up.
Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah.
Catherine, are you taking policy,
Yeah.
or am I?
Just to say,
Speak up.
it's still up for public comment. There so far is no public comment. And does anyone have any questions, or do you want to discuss any more of said policies up for vote next Monday? Wow,
If there's no public comment, I'm guessing the committee's
all
good.
good.
I see a lot of
Okay.
agreement there. Good. We look forward to that next week.
Do we have to waive the reading, second reading? No, that's.
That's
the
next
first.
week, next week. Yep. Okay. School choice process update.
Oh, yes. So we had an interesting scenario take place where after we presented the school choice openings to you and we had the discussion and you voted on them, Principal Lacoste was informed, then reached out to me that he had 7 families that are registered, or that would be in the Robinson district, who were not there for kindergarten, who are planning to return for first grade. So for various reasons, they weren't there for kindergarten. But they weren't included in those kindergarten numbers rolling up to first grade. And so he expressed concern about having a school choice opening at Robinson in first grade at all. So Nina and I were like, ooh, okay, well, what do we do with that information? Because you've already approved it. Can we change that information? So Nina reached out to Desi, and we learned a lot of interesting information. First and foremost, you do not have to vote on school choice openings. The only public hearing that needs to take place is if the district ever decides to not participate in school choice. So that's the law, and so Desi clarified that you don't have to have a public hearing. Now, we talked about this when we were doing the agenda setting, and we think that the process that the school committee has been going through of me showing numbers to you and you voting on those numbers is still a good thing for us to continue doing. We just now know that we don't have to do that public hearing aspect, which requires us to put it in the paper, which we only will need to do a public hearing with school choice if we ever decide as a district to not participate. Does that make sense to everybody?
For a particular year, right?
Yeah, if we ever choose to not participate in school choice, we have to have a public hearing before you then vote to do that.
So if there's a change in the policy or the program as opposed to just the numbers.
So our practice of me bringing numbers to you and you discussing it and you voting on those numbers and us publicizing those numbers is still a good practice. But that's not what the law says we have to do. And so, but because you did vote on those numbers, I'm telling you this story because my suggestion is that you vote to amend and remove the school choice opening from Robinson grade 1.
Okay. And so it's one opening.
It was the grade 1 slot at Robinson School, and it's in there, and I think it was 1. I do think it was 1.
So we basically removed it.
We remove it just, but because the way that you voted it and the way you articulated it was very specific grade at very specific school. So let's find that number.
Yeah, that's just.
I think that's a good idea, but I apologize for not having that.
No, it's okay.
So I'm just asking a question that the next time when we actually vote on it, do we need to know exactly which school, which grade, or you just present a total number?
So you don't, that's just the way that we've been doing it. And so, I mean, the school committee, you could decide if you wanted to change the way that we did that. Gloria has her hand raised.
It's 2, Dr. Chu.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
It was 2 openings.
Two
at
openings for Robinson.
first grade.
Okay.
That we
So
be
we're
removing.
cutting one
Is
or
that why
cutting
you're
both?
taking
Both. We would remove the opening slots at Robinson grade 1.
Okay.
Gloria, is your hand down now?
And then
Well, my question was, one, whether we had other grade 1 openings and whether other K2s might have the same issue that Robinson is having, but just may not have picked up on it yet, because there's always a huge degree of, unpredictability in terms of those kind of hidden kindergarten families out there who may be coming back to the district for first grade and for whatever reason may have made a different kindergarten choice. But first grade always has a large degree of unpredictability because of that. So Robinson is seeing that, and we're removing the Robinson number. I'm just wondering if maybe the same issue might crop up at NAB or at Miller if we had grade 1 school choice openings at one of those schools.
It hasn't been communicated to us, and this is something that Principal Lacoste was aware of, and it was the number 7 that was specifically just, hey, maybe I shouldn't have the 2 openings at this moment in time. That was the concern, yeah.
I was just I pulled up the memo that we voted on, and for the other K-2 schools, we have 2 openings at Nabnasset in K, the 2 openings in Robinson at first, and then 3 openings at Miller in first.
I feel like the other principals were confident in that, but I also think that we do the lottery in the summer, and so I mean I can verify this week before our next meeting as well too. But that was the way that those numbers came to us in the first place came with.
I'm going to ask a rudimentary question, if that's okay. So if we lose, if these 2 slots don't really exist at the Robinson, then that means that these 2 slots are removed from the program
Correct.
generally, and so we wouldn't think about if there's room another.
Putting them at Miller, say. Or
That's the question.
yeah.
That's the
Well, the
question.
issue is
Do we
that
think we
that's,
have-
we looked at the specific space and numbers at
Already.
each school. So that's the way we looked at it in the first place.
Okay.
So I wouldn't want to say, because they didn't fit someplace, we could
Go
put them
elsewhere.
someplace else, because that's specifically how we get
Yeah.
the information for the numbers.
You already did that.
And
part.
the overall number of 75 that was presented to us it's not arbitrary. It's based on space, and so we think that that'll bring it down to 73 is the
Right.
appropriate thing at this time.
No, I appreciate you answering my question.
Yeah.
I thought that for Westford, the cap was set at 75 some years ago.
You, as a school committee, that became the target, right? And we've never, it's been years since we've gone up to that number. But I do think that the 75 as a target was based on, actually, I couldn't even say, I think that in itself might have been arbitrary when it was set.
Oh, okay.
But we haven't been going up to it. We've been, I mean, we're almost 20 below. And so this year when we looked at it, we thought, well, actually, we have room to get closer to that cap, but that even itself is something that the school committee could adjust and change.
Gloria has her hand up again.
Hi, Gloria. Thank you.
It's so good that you're seeing that.
Thank you. I again, just to follow up on that, is to clarify what is the timing of the school choice hearing over the summer? When does that normally occur?
It's in July. It was in the 3rd or 4th week of July, I believe. I'm trying to remember when we did it.
Well, I mean, since we as a school committee don't normally meet over the summer, I guess I'm volunteering the committee here, but maybe we should kind of acknowledge that although it may not be legally required for us to vote on these numbers, we always have. I don't know if we want to build in some flexibility to the administration to make the call over the summer without us having an official meeting, or if we would request, hey, if we know this can be an evolving situation, so if Miller suddenly has a surge of grade 1, or really any school at any grade level has a surge of summer registrations, and the principals feel like they need the flexibility to tweak these numbers, would we grant the administration the flexibility to tweak those numbers before the lottery, or would we as a committee want to come back and have just kind of a special brief meeting to hear that update before the lottery? It's just, I think, a good conversation to have, especially because I would absolutely want our building leadership to have the flexibility, and maybe we should just consider how to give that to them.
I appreciate that, Gloria. I will also throw out there, last year we did the lottery on July 28th. And so that would be after when we have our school committee retreat, if we have that in July. Isn't that when we did that?
Yeah, but I don't know that we know for sure.
Okay.
I know some of us aren't here for the
Okay.
entire month of July almost, so. So we might have
See
to.
my mother.
Okay.
We may have to do early August, or
That's fine.
we'll figure it out. So I don't know. But I do think. So I'm trying. The 75 number as a cap, that's not a policy.
No.
That's been practice, right?
It's been practice.
I mean, to what Gloria just said, I don't think we have to vote on the exact number. I mean, I know we did earlier, but I also like giving flexibility when we can and not binding things when we don't have to. Just like I look forward to not holding a public hearing for it next year if we're staying in the program because we
Right.
don't have to. And so I certainly would be open to leaving it up to your judgment as the summer comes and you look at numbers, and as long as we stay under the 75, if it does look like one of the other K-2 schools has something, adding a slot or two, I'm comfortable granting that through a vote here.
Yeah, I think that's where my thinking is, because Dr. Choi explained that the school committee doesn't have to vote on this. So maybe we should actually rescind the vote last time, and then or whatever mechanism to actually give you the flexibility to just as a administration to actually to deal with whatever number you're comfortable with.
Are we saying, when you talk about the flexibility and how to give that in tonight's meeting, and Min Cheng raises a point that we can discuss too, but I just want to understand, are we talking about any changes over the summer would only go down, or you would foresee adding spots?
I wouldn't foresee adding spots specifically, but I mean, that's kind of what I think Chris was just suggesting, is that there could be some flexibility. If it stayed within this range, then it's still in line with what we were talking about. I would only see somebody saying,
I got
wait a
more
second,
move-ins
we
than
have
I
more
expected.
move-ins
Okay.
and
Well, so just while we're talking about it.
and that has to happen before the public, it has to happen before the lottery takes place anyway, because
Okay.
you couldn't then accept somebody and then deny them.
I think there's a fair discussion to have about whether, in whether our responsibility is to
Yep.
officially vote. But while we're talking about it, I just want to again raise the concern I had when we originally voted on it, which was that I think our messaging during budget season has been declining enrollment and staffing adjustments. And so I worry about the conflicting message with some of these school choice positions, and especially because some of them were at the specific schools and grade levels that we adjusted staffing. And I know that I trust a building principal to know where they have those spots, but I worry about the community messaging of that. So I'm comfortable with whatever the committee decides as far as our responsibility, but I, again, would just have a concern with raising spots.
But it wouldn't be raising it above the 75 that we already voted.
Personally, I'm not really comfortable with 75 as the practice from years ago, when we are sending that message that we have a declining enrollment and we are adjusting properly.
But we
So-
did vote for that.
We did vote for that, I didn't.
That's all I'm saying.
No, I know, I
That's all
agree.
I'm saying.
And, but you're
We're
saying
not-
the 75, which wasn't a vote. Like, and I personally wouldn't even like the 75.
What was our vote?
Our vote was
this.
up to 70.
Was 75.
75.
Yeah, so that's what we voted on.
Right.
You're talking about two different things slightly, though. Valerie's talking about the actual vote, which she, I believe, didn't.
Yes.
You,
Right.
yeah,
I did
voted.
not approve.
Right.
Right.
And then and the arbitrary, where did the 75 come from as well, too?
Right.
That's the part.
I'm talking about our actual vote, which was up to 75.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, like, it doesn't matter where the number came from. If we voted at 75, it's 75.
Right.
To your question, right? Right, whether it could go someplace else or something.
I kind of opened the can of worms with the flexibility. Maybe I can throw out a motion that might, I mean, very much please give me feedback if this doesn't fit the will of the committee, because I'm not in the room, I'm not reading all the faces, but I think this might help. I'll put a motion on the table to amend our previous vote on school choice to permit administration some flexibility to alter those numbers prior to the lottery, with notice to the school committee chair. If the school committee chair, in consultation with the superintendent, determines that a school committee meeting should be held to discuss those adjustments, that will happen. But, sorry, this is the world's longest motion.
Poor Nina.
But if the chair and the superintendent jointly determine that a minor tweak to those numbers is appropriate, then an additional meeting would not be necessary. Did that kind of make sense?
I don't know if there is a meeting necessary, because according to Dr. Chu, like by consulting with DSE, he's like, the school committee doesn't even need to vote on that, right?
Right. I'm with Ming Chen. Hey, Gloria, I think your motion makes sense. For simplicity's sake, I think we should just leave it as the superintendent will inform the chair, period. This stuff about that we're going to have an additional meeting and stuff, that will be at the discretion of the chair.
You want to do a
Strikes
friendly
me.
amendment to
Yeah.
the motion?
So my amendment, to try to simplify this, would be to amend our previous vote to permit the administration flexibility prior to the date of the lottery to change the school choice amount with notice to the school committee chair prior to doing so.
And not to exceed the 75.
Correct.
Maybe that's a given. Then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Friendly amendment accepted.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor.
Oh, second.
That motion just got seconded. All right, any discussion?
Sorry.
Yep.
I support flexibility, I support the Robinson, but I'm still gonna be against our 75 spots.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. What do I vote on this?
And I think the point is to say that we can discuss that if it comes up, if we're getting, I mean, it's up to the school committee chair at that point. If we find ourselves at 75 spots again or near it, right?
So do we have any idea, just numbers-wise, where we might be at for next year, school choice?
No, because I haven't seen
Okay.
who's put them, because sometimes we have people who don't actually submit for that grade level, so there's
Right.
times when you don't actually get that slot filled.
They're just opportunities.
Yes, at this moment, right.
Yeah.
So 75 is the maximum opportunity. It doesn't mean they're going to be filled.
Correct.
Any other discussion?
And then actually for the 75, we already have how many are existing students already?
Well, those,
Oh, you have it there.
yeah.
50 something, right?
Yeah, I thought it was 50-something,
And 60 after graduation, 56.
Okay, so additionally it's 19.
We increased, I think it was 17 or 19, right,
Yeah,
based on the
so-
graduation.
Okay, so to hit 75, and that means an increase of 19.
Right.
And then if we don't increase 19, like all those teachers, they wouldn't have a full class.
Well, because it's not all in one place, though.
Yeah, it's like two over here, one over there.
It's like some classes probably will only have like 13 students.
Well, we're just talking about two
Yeah.
kids at the Robinson.
Right.
A class size.
There aren't that many in one
should
grade
never
in one
be-
spot. Yeah.
I mean, you want the smallest class size
No,
possible
but
anyway.
on the other hand, you want to actually utilize the investment, right? So we can get some money back to actually beef up our budget.
And also,
Otherwise, you can just cut down the class size to 10 for every single class.
That would be great. Can we put that in?
No, that may not be great because sometimes 10 students may not be a good study
I know.
environment.
I'll be honest. My struggle with that vote as well was the Stony Brook slots. You know, in general, I just never see as, you know, a class size, you know, as a target, you know, to meet as opposed to, you know, the benefits for having smaller class size. And this year in particular, when I've heard a lot of teachers saying they're having a lot of behavior issues and, you know, was this, yeah, anyway.
I think those are two separate issues. I think that there are increased mental health needs, not just in our school district, but in all school districts in the United States of
Yeah.
America. And I think that the school choice is an opportunity to increase our diversity, which is something that we've been thinking about this year a lot.
Oh, you think you come at it from diversity?
Do you feel like, so we have a motion, do you feel like this gives you the flexibility?
I feel like you got anything out of
Yeah, I
this
did.
discussion.
I shared with you the important information that we don't have to have a public hearing, and talked about removing two, which is still my goal, and you have given me flexibility to.
And this,
for the-
you feel like this
Yeah.
vote will give you the flexibility to remove the
I think
two,
it's fine.
to add two back in if you see it somewhere
If
else?
we saw that, I'm not
Just making sure-
estimating
yep,
that
yep,
that's gonna
yep,
happen.
Just making sure
but
that solves
Yeah.
potential scenarios that could happen. Okay, I don't see anything else in the way of conversation, so I'm gonna call for a vote. So we're voting to amend our prior vote in order to give, I'm gonna paraphrase this, the superintendent flexibility to adjust the school choice numbers as needed or as appropriate, based on the actual spaces in the schools prior to the lottery later in the summer. Not to exceed 75 school choice students. Okay.
Chris, just to add one friendly amendment on that
Oh,
with
Jesus.
notice to the school committee chair.
Thank you. That's we already did that. Yeah, the official motion already, I was paraphrasing it, so yes. Thank you. Roll call. Sean?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Valerie?
Nay.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Catherine?
Nay.
Ari?
Aye.
Okay, that passes 5-2. Thank you, folks. Okay, it's 9:44. Restorative process, I think.
No.
Oop, you skipped
yeah,
the
just
9:35.
keep in mind.
Skip the meeting
We
schedule.
were so close. We were so close
The
to our
meeting
time.
schedule, it's in the packet, folks. Did you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you understand the
any
suggestions?
concerns?
August 15th.
Happy birthday to me.
Are you the 15th?
Yep.
Are you really?
Okay.
I've learned so much.
The 26th.
What did I see it?
There we go. There we go.
We've got a couple Tuesdays and Wednesdays based
Yeah,
on holidays.
There are like 5 Tuesdays, which is a record.
That's a record, right? I think it would be, yeah.
If anyone has an ongoing conflict on Tuesday nights, that could be a problem.
Clear it. Clear it now.
Oh, well.
Are they the same as select board, or are they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of those will be.
Yeah, because they're based on the warrant.
Yeah.
That October one.
Is the Tuesday, October 11th, that sometimes has been a school holiday? Or is it a professional development day? Is that what the deal is? Okay, thank you, sorry.
Yep.
Motion to strike.
Did we? I could be completely wrong. I have memory that in January we moved that first meeting right after the school break.
We did this year.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was it for any
January
particular?
3rd?
Yeah.
It's because that's in the budget season, and so at that time we decided to, and I benefited from that because it was my 50th birthday, so I didn't argue when someone else suggested it.
I think you should really
I'll be
celebrate your
honest now.
51st birthday.
I mean, so we had a reason for it,
We
and
bumped it.
we talked about it, and it had to do with the budget process and where we were at
right.
December.
We wanted that
and
week.
we wanted to where we were planning to be presenting stuff, so we did.
But we traditionally have often had that first Monday in January.
Are you traveling again?
I wish. No, I find it hard. You're just getting everyone back sorted, and kids are trying to get routines, and it's switching on the brain.
I feel like I'd like it because I feel like we're always cramming, especially during budget season, trying to get everything in.
The other piece, it was on the schedule this year
It
as well
was,
too.
yeah.
We made a decision in the fall
That we
based
could-
on
that we
where
could
we were at.
manage it, right.
And I think it was also from like a work product deliverable point of view.
Yeah.
It was,
Right, that like,
yeah.
what are we gonna be discussing, and does that need to be created over break, or is there, like,
Correct.
earn the break and?
So we'll keep an eye on it
Yeah.
this fall as well. Any other comments?
One comment, I think that this calendar that,
I think you're going to say what I was thinking.
well, NINA has a special one. I don't think that's what's in the packet, though.
Yes, this is the one.
Yeah,
I'm
it is,
sorry.
yeah.
Is that at least that the 7 of us should have a version of this?
Mm.
And that, we talked about this in agenda setting, but potentially finding a way to mark when committee meetings are on the parent version.
Yeah.
Yeah, I update this. If this
Oh
is
my
true,
God. Are you-
then update this, right?
Are you thinking the same thing I'm thinking?
Well, I think
I've had so much trouble reading this.
We've run out of symbols, folks.
Like when I was.
It's just so nice.
Well, it's also, the problem is that this, we specifically have the most updated calendar on an identified color of paper. And you are running out of symbols because Nina is able to use this for the wall calendar, and so she's able to use highlighted colors,
Yeah.
which you
Yeah,
wouldn't be able
we
to
have-
use on that.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
nice, though, that the list, I mean, maybe it's just we attach the school committee list of dates,
Yeah.
you know.
So
that
it's-
it's-
yeah.
yeah.
Is there room? You have the backside.
Yeah, mark
The
it.
backside,
No,
or-
she doesn't do a backside.
Yeah,
But
mark
how
it
is
on
this
the
different
official
from the
calendar is
official?
helpful.
So this
Yeah.
is,
Because like
this
this
is like
parents,
Nina's
they
big wall
can,
calendar, and
they
she
can
does
see.
meetings and
I
warranty.
mean,
And
I
she
needed a
moves, like,
decoder
the
ring for this thing,
dismissal.
so I'll say.
Like, she
Yeah.
cuts this
Yeah,
stuff
no,
out
it's a
of
lot.
only what's important, and then pulls, like, the
Just
We
as
do
a
have
working
room.
mom, making sure that all those
Yeah.
things run like by both calendars.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to see is school committee meetings are like a hologram. That's how you have a school committee meeting.
So,
See, I thought you were gonna
so
say
we
something
have
cool.
circles and we have squares. Next time we just have X or Y.
Okay.
Back to our meeting schedule.
Oh, so we have to vote on it.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Vote.
Motion to approve the proposed school year 2022-2023 school committee meeting schedule.
Second.
Any last questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. We're voting to approve next year's committee calendar. Sean?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Valerie?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous 7-0. I'll see you all those dates. Thank you. Restorative process. I was starting to say before I realized I was skipping ahead. I don't think unless you have something, I don't have anything.
No.
We should
We need
connect
to
in the
connect
next
on that, yeah.
day or so, and then we'll have something for next time. And then we have a personnel update in the packet. Anything you want to speak to on that, or?
Carry this.
Well, you
Of
can
course.
see the shifts up top, and then we've got the retirements on the bottom. We have 17 retirees this year, many of which you've already seen because they've already retired, but this captures all of them on one list. I do want to point out Pat Lenhart, Director of School Finance, who has resigned and is taking a role much closer to home, and it's a great family decision for her. And we wish her the best of luck and appreciate everything that she's done for us in just one short year. She's done yeoman's work with the budget, and we feel, while we will miss her very much, it's a very comfortable spot to be handing off to a new person. So in terms of the process, we have already posted for her position, and we're going to have an interview committee. I don't know if you want to speak to the
go ahead.
members of that. It will be central office administrators as well as a principal, and Chris had mentioned that it would be a great idea if perhaps somebody from the finance subcommittee, a member of that, could be on these interviews as well.
Be great.
So I don't know if Valerie is chair or whoever.
three of you
You
could
can
fight
talk
it
out.
about it.
We can talk about it tomorrow.
Arm wrestle for it.
Oh, keep fighting tomorrow?
Yeah.
Actually, just to note on that process, I think it popped up last year when we were doing the process, is that once a final candidate has been selected, I think that has to
does
come to
come
school
to the school
committee.
committee, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why
That was the other reason why
Dr.
I said,
Chu
hey,
had
we should
mentioned
have.
Makes sense, yeah.
having a
Yeah.
school committee member, because ultimately it will be your final blessing. So we look forward to kind of taking a rolling, because of the timing, a rolling
Admission process.
applicant process, and as people come in, we'll just be evaluating them. So it's not going to necessarily be at the end of a certain date that we'll have X amount of interviews. So we're hoping that there can be some flexibility with whomever might join the crew.
So that you're aware, Pat is gonna be with us through July. So
okay.
she's, we've
good.
worked it out with the other districts so that she would start there in August 1. Our contracts do have a 90-day clause in them. And so she knows that, and so she was ready for that, but I feel like if we can move forward, it's better for the other district as well too. So we are
Transition. Yeah.
potentially. If we can get somebody in sooner, clearly, we would do that.
And the other piece I want to point out, although I don't see the name on here, is that Jeff Goodwin, who is our current, although now former as of today, Assistant Director of
He's the
Facilities.
we had appointed him the interim
Right.
director.
Right. So we interviewed, it was myself, Dr. Chu, Jody Ross, and Eric Heidemann interviewed candidates, and fortunately Jeff Goodwin, who is the interim, has been selected for the job, and he accepted, and he officially starts today.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that was
Excited
just-
to have
Jeff.
that build.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's great.
Very cool.
okay.
And I see we have some retirements of folks who've been in the district quite a while.
Right.
So thanks to all of them for many years of service to the district.
That's all.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Are you sure?
Damn.
A second.
Thank you.
All in favor? Roll call. Sean?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
Aye. Valerie?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
We are adjourned.